Dear colleagues, I declare the open today's meeting. My name is Georgi Simaku, and I'm Deputy Minister of Infrastructure and Energy of Albania. The President invited me to preside over the Assembly's deliberation for this meeting, ministerial meeting. And it is an honor for me to be here with all of you today as we have discussions on agenda number 6, Ministerial Plenary meeting, National Energy Planning and Implementation for Fostering Energy Transition. I would like warmly to welcome all the delegation present. I also would like to extend a welcome to the Director General of IRENA and our keynote speakers. I would like to welcome our moderator and distinguished member of our panel. The Assembly has before it a background note with the same title, contained in the document A/11/BN/2. I now invite the Director General for his introductory remarks. Director General, you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Excellencies, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen. The coming year will be shaped by two monumental challenges: recovering better from the COVID crisis and the race to contain the climate emergency. To achieve this, we need clear vision, bolstered by comprehensive strategies and plans. And I'm pleased to welcome you all to today's ministerial discussion. National energy planning is key for providing a framework for improving NDCs. Coupled with a quantified target and backed by enabling policy and regulatory framework, they can accelerate action by providing a direction of travel and signal to the market. As countries revise their NDCs, it will be important to ensure that the commitments in the NDCs put us on the path to achieving the objectives of the Paris Agreement. This includes more ambitious energy transition components and expanding their scope to cover all the energy system, including the end-use sectors of transport, industry, and buildings. IRENA Global Renewable Outlook set out the pathway for a renewable-based energy transformation aligned with the climate goal by 2050. Importantly, it emphasized that this can result in major socioeconomic benefits, including job, economic growth, and improved welfare. And we hope that funding will continue to provide guidance to decision makers as they plan their energy transitions. IRENA stands ready to continue to work with all of you in this area. Together with UNDP under the Climate Promise Initiative, along with several other partners, including UNFCCC, the UK COP26 presidency, the government of my own country, the Italian government, collaborating on G20 and linking the work of G20 with the UK presidency, as has been outlined yesterday in his intervention by my dear friends, Vice Minister Mario Di Stefano, the NDC partnership and regional NDC hubs. IRENA is so far engaged with almost 70 countries across the world, contributing to their effort in enhancing and implementing the energy component of the NDCs. In these countries, ARENA has been using its expertise for providing support in a wide range of policy, regulatory, and technology areas. These include strengthening data collection and MRV system, providing perspective on country-specific decarbonization options for energy-consuming sectors, as well as helping to create more conducive policy framework for renewable energy investments, while also facilitating access to finance. We will continue to use the full suite of ARENA's tools, expertise, and initiatives to work side by side with countries to implement their NDC. We hope that especially the climate investment platform launched by ARENA, UNDP, C4All in cooperation with the Green Climate Fund can provide tangible support. ARENA has also long been working with members to improve the energy planning practice, including through capacity building initiatives as the Long-Term Energy Scenario Network, ARENA network of national scenario practitioners working on long-term energy scenarios. Ladies and gentlemen, as the global community comes together to combat climate change, knowledge exchange and international cooperation remain as important as ever. We look forward to hearing from ministers on their national experience, including on align their energy plans and NDC with the post-COVID recovery strategies. And I welcome your feedback on ARENA's work in this regard, most importantly, on how we can better support our members. I'm also delighted that our dear friends, Patrizia Espinosa, Executive Secretary of UNFCCC, Alok Sharma, the UK Presidency of COP26, and Achim Steiner, Administrator of UNDP, are here with us today to share their perspective. We collaborate closely with all the three organizations so we can leverage our strength and deliver impactful results for our membership. With our permission, Mr. Vice President, and before I hand back the floor to you, I would like to show a short video. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Energy accounts for approximately 2/3 of global greenhouse gases. Decarbonizing the energy system is crucial for a sustainable future for our planet. IRENA's energy transformation pathway shows that renewables should account for more than half of global power by 2030. To that end, IRENA and partners support countries in the enhancement and implementation of their nationally determined contributions, or NDCs. Working together in enhancing renewable targets and NDCs can help us reach the objectives of the Paris Agreement. 2021 and COP26 are significant milestones in our global efforts to reduce energy-related emission. Today's decisions will shape a climate resilience path for a better future.
Thank you, Director General, for your remarks and a very interesting video. I now invite Ms. Patrizia Espinosa, Executive Secretary of UNFCCC, to deliver her keynote address. Ms. Espinosa, you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Vice President, dear Francesco, distinguished ministers, excellencies. I am very grateful for the opportunity to address this very important ministerial meeting. I trust it is not too late to express my best wishes to all of you and your families on the new year. 2020 was an exceptionally difficult year. The coronavirus pandemic and its economic and social fallout posed major challenges to every country. Next year, this year that has already started actually will be no less demanding. Overcoming the pandemic will remain, as we have already seen over the last weeks, a key priority for societies and governments. It will also be essential to address climate change, the other global emergency, with a renewed sense of urgency. Temperatures continue to rise on both the land and the ocean's surface. Greenhouse gas emissions are not declining enough to achieve the 1.5 limit agreed 5 years ago in Paris, and time is running out. The issues of energy is at the heart of the climate change emergency. According to the IPCC, about 2/3 of global greenhouse gas emissions consist of CO2 from fossil fuel combustion and industrial processes. Those emissions have risen steadily over the past few decades. The IPCC reports that, and I quote, about half of cumulative CO2 emissions between 1750 and 2010 have occurred in the last 40 years. 2020 was a notable exception, though admittedly not for the right reasons. The Global Carbon Project has estimated that last year carbon dioxide emissions fell by 7%, the biggest drop ever. And the International Energy Agency reported this week that global emissions of the potent greenhouse gas methane from oil and gas production dropped 10% in 2020, mainly because of lower output. Lockdowns and restrictions on movement to curb the spread of COVID-19 pandemic account for this unprecedented fall. Emissions, however, are expected to rebound once the pandemic is over. We must also remember that climate change results from the cumulative buildup of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere over time, not emissions in any particular year. Think of it like a nation's finances. A balanced budget in one fiscal year doesn't erase the overall debt acquired over time. The principle remains, interest continues to grow, and financial flexibility is restricted as more and more funds go to servicing the debt and avoiding default. If we consider emissions and climate change in this way, we are seriously close to default. If we don't reduce emissions now and over the long term, while also working to build resilience to climate impacts already with us, the consequences will likely be profound, widespread, and devastating. This is why 2021 is so important for us all. The coexistence of COVID-19 pandemic and the climate emergency is a formidable challenge, but it is also a unique opportunity to shape the future. I am convinced that this will be a critical year. What we do or fail to do over the coming months will be decisive to our success in confronting that twofold challenge. Energy is at the heart of the climate change emergency, and it must be at the heart of its solution. A swift and broad transition to renewable energy will be essential to achieve the emission reduction goals laid down by the Paris Agreement. IRENA's own Global Renewables Outlook has shown that emissions can fall to 70% less than today's level over the next 3 decades, and even reach net zero by 2060 at the latest, consistent with the 1.5-degree limit. For this to happen, the international community must take decisive action now, establishing ambitious goals on emissions reduction and turning those goals into policies and regulatory frameworks in each country. The nationally determined contributions are the best instruments to turn pledges into programs, ambition into action. Out of 189 parties that have ratified the Paris Agreement, 90% mentioned renewables and roughly 70% included quantifiable energy targets. This has a sound basis on which to build greater ambition. According to a recent report by IRENA, if all renewable power targets included in NDCs were implemented, global installed capacity for renewable power generation would grow almost 42% over the next decade. It is promising, but it is not enough. Countries need to do much more to promote a swift and comprehensive transition towards a decarbonized global energy system. Fostering renewable energy is not only a matter of political commitment, it is also an expression of enlightened self-interest and foresight. IRENA's recent Global Renewables Outlook report indicated that investment in an energy system fit for the 21st century could push jobs in the renewable sector to 42 million by 2050, and that this could result in a GDP growth of 2.4%, amounting to a cumulative gain of $98 trillion by mid-century. IRENA has a central role to play in this transition. It already helps dozens of countries around the world to scale up renewable energy, including 17 of the world's least developed countries and 20 small island states. The key topics of today's session, energy planning and implementation, are crucial to foster a swift energy transition in line with the goals of the Paris Agreement. Recent developments around the world are a source of encouragement. Last year, pledges by Japan, China, the Republic of Korea, and others constitute important steps towards lower emission. Encouraging signs of renewed commitment by the United States to the climate agenda is also a welcome development. As I have suggested, this year we have a unique opportunity to address the climate change emergency as the world fosters a strong and sustainable economic recovery and ultimately overcomes the global pandemic. And to do so, we must ensure the success of COP26. While we need to see progress in numerous areas throughout the year and during the forthcoming negotiations in Glasgow, let me quickly highlight the 5 key items where work must be advanced. First, nations must meet pre-2020 commitments made in the last 10 years. This is the only way to maintain trust in the multilateral system. Second, negotiations on the implementation of the Paris Agreement must be finalized, resulting in a balanced agreement. It is time to wrap up outstanding items and negotiations and to unleash the agreement's full potential. Third, nations must live up to their financial commitments. This is especially true of the pledge by developed nations to mobilize 100 billion annually by 2020. Fourth, we need to see clear and unequivocal political determination to raise climate ambition. Governments and societies must come together to turn expectations into decisions. Fifth, we need more positive engagement by observers and initiatives driven by non-party stakeholders. IRENA will be essential to achieve these goals. We at the UNFCCC look forward to working with this vital institution to make 2021 the year of climate action. If we do this, I am confident that together we will take a decisive step towards a cleaner, greener, and sustainable future for the benefit of our generation and all of those to come. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Ms. Espinosa, for your remarks. I now invite His Excellency, Mr. Alok Sharma of COP26 President-designate to deliver his keynote address. Excellency, you have the floor.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it is an absolute pleasure to join you today. And I'd like to thank Mr. Francesco La Camera for the fantastic work that Irina is doing under his leadership. Friends, we all know that we must act now on climate change. If we do not, the consequences will be almost unimaginable. Crops failing, nature devastated, and hundreds of millions threatened by rising seas. To avoid this, it is vital to decarbonize the energy sector, which accounts for around 2/3 of global emissions. And so I'm asking governments around the world to do 3 key things to achieve this. First, raise ambition and action at home. Second, invest in clean recoveries in response to the COVID pandemic. And third, work together to make progress on our climate ambitions. And I'm urging all countries to come forward with new nationally determined contributions and long-term strategies, and to put clear policies in place to achieve them. Policies like improving product efficiency standards, phasing out coal power, encouraging decarbonization in those sectors where it is a challenge, and creating the policy environment to attract private finance. Getting finance flowing, both public and private, is one of my key COP26 priorities, including urging developed countries to honor the commitment they have made to raise $100 billion a year in international climate finance. And I'm grateful to Irina for its work on NDCs and long-term planning and its support for countries on the clean energy transition. I'm pleased to say that here in the UK, we are acting. We announced a new NDC consistent with our target to reach net zero by 2050. And last year, Prime Minister Boris Johnson announced our 10-point plan for a green industrial revolution, a plan to mobilize £12 billion of government investment that spurs 3 times as much from the private sector, a plan to power every home in the country from offshore wind within a decade, and to invest in nuclear, in hydrogen technologies and carbon capture usage and storage. A plan which will support and create 250,000 jobs. And this shows how investment in clean technology can drive our recovery from COVID-19, which I know has been a key focus of Irina's work as well. By aligning our recovery packages with the Paris Agreement, we can help to build clean growth into the heart of our economies. And of course, many countries are doing fantastic work to invest in green recoveries, and now we need all leaders to follow suit. We're confident in this approach because we have seen that clean growth is absolutely possible. Over the past 30 years in the UK, we have seen our economy grow by 75%, whilst reducing our emissions by 43%. And we've also seen how, by working together, we can make progress faster, by increasing incentives for investment, creating economies of scale, and accelerating innovation. Solar and wind power costs have fallen by 28% and 15% respectively, each time global deployment has doubled. But we only realize these benefits if we tailor our response to each challenge and sector. That is why international collaboration is one of the key goals of my COP presidency. Our COP26 campaigns are bringing governments, industry, investors, development banks, and civil society together around 5 critical areas: finance, nature, adaptation, resilience, clean transport, and of course, clean energy. And we've created new forums of collaboration like the Zero Emission Vehicles Transition Council and the Energy Transition Council. And I would like to thank everyone involved with this work, including Irina as a member of the COP26 Energy Transition Council. The work of this council includes improving the international support to developing countries to move away from coal. Friends, together, through ambition, collaboration, and investment in green recoveries, we can transform the global energy sector. So let's take action now to put the world on track for a clean and prosperous future.
Thank you, Excellency, for your remarks. It is now time for us to hand over to Mr. Ashim Steiner, Administrator of United Nations Development Programme, to moderate the panel discussion with our distinguished guests. After the panel discussion, I will open the floor for interventions.
Thank you very much, Deputy Minister and Vice President of the 11th IRENA Assembly, Deputy Minister Simaco, Francesco La Camera, my dear colleague and Director General, Excellencies, Ministers, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for inviting me to moderate today's session. And as you can imagine, being the head of the United Nations Development Programme, joining my colleagues, Inger Anderson, Patricia, Fekita, and others who are part of the United Nations family or circle of friends of IRENA, it's a great pleasure to be here with you today. And on no better an occasion than reflecting on national energy planning and implementation for fostering energy transitions. This is what the theme of this panel is. And as we have already heard from previous speakers, 2021 may in the minds of some be a year in which we will perhaps not be able to progress. That was a view that was certainly very prevalent last year. It is a view that is still held by some. But I must say, I take a very different viewpoint, and I hope that in the accounts from your countries and your experiences, you will also be able to give us a sense of, on the one hand, realizing that COVID-19 and all that it has imposed on our countries, communities, and economies in terms of setbacks, it is not necessarily an outcome that leads us to abandoning either ambition, as Alok Sharma just alluded to, or keeping in mind that with COP26, we have a historical milestone in which the work of IRENA, the work of and the contribution of renewable energy, the transition towards cleaner energy economies is going to be a fundamental pivot point, not only in terms of the climate change agenda, but indeed of the recovery of our economies. The green recovery, as it is often referred to, the green economies, the blue economies, I mean, we can have many shades of color, but we all know that intuitively, there is an expectation among citizens and a growing expectation amongst also key actors in our economies, be they investors, be they industry, that governments are sending a signal that is clear and unambiguous about the direction of travel. And hopefully, what we can explore today is not only the aspirational, even though we need a great deal of aspiration in terms of the ambitions that we are meant to bring to this challenge of a cleaner energy world that lies ahead of us, but in practical terms, explore what is it that will make a country, an economy, a world of investors, or indeed the public who is also looking for just transitions, to actually get a clear signal that we're not continuing on an incremental path. Amongst you, there are countries that already for years have demonstrated that incrementalism is not necessarily the context in which we need to think. You have shown and demonstrated extraordinary progress. 2021 is also the year when there will be a high-level dialogue at the United Nations for the first time in decades on energy, focusing on the Sustainable Development Goal number 7. Embedded in that goal is much of what we will discuss today with a specific focus on renewable energy, but it also reminds us that as we think about energy, as we think about energy transitions, this is not only a matter of carbon emissions. This is per unit of GDP or however you wish to measure it. This is also about a just transition, about the socioeconomic dimensions, about a public that is looking to leaders in the public and private sector to make possible something that we have discussed for too long and not acted fast enough for too long. So with these brief introductory remarks, let me just commit again, as I have done to Francesco and yesterday at our session, the full commitment of UNDP and indeed with us together as a UN family to the work of IRENA, to the work that you as members of IRENA are pursuing, and that we obviously are extremely keen to continue to intensify our efforts, be it through the lens of a Sustainable Development Goal 7 on energy, that includes access, that includes efficiency, that includes clean energy targets, but also in the broader context of COP26 and the NDCs, to which UNDP, together with our sister agency UNEP and many others in the NDC partnership, has committed to make sure that when Patricia, together with the presidency, gavels the COP26 to close in Glasgow later this year, we have truly met the test of raised ambition. Let me now turn to the Minister of Energy of Malta, the Honorable Miriam Dalli, and invite her to begin addressing us. We have foreseen, as I've been given by our organizers, a time slot of 4 to 5 minutes. And I will raise this little hand here 1 minute before your time comes to an end, just to give you a little bit of pacing support. This will come up at minute 4, and then you have 1 minute to wrap up. I hope you will forgive me if sometimes maybe I may then have to apply slightly enhanced incentives to keep us on schedule. And Minister Dalli, if I may begin to ask you to perhaps elaborate on the renewable support and climate action and energy security policies that you have been pursuing in Malta, and to share some of the lessons on climate action through renewable energy, particularly in a, inverted commas, small island economy, but also in the unique position to perhaps make a transformation happen across the entire island in a reasonable amount of time. So Minister Dalli, over to you.
Thanks a lot, and good afternoon, Steiner, and allow me to say thanks a lot to the Director General, Francesco La Camera, for his work, and also to Irina for this opportunity. I will go straight to your questions, and I will be also for the hand to keep in time with the 5 minutes that we have. As you know, being part of the European Union, together with other partners in the EU, we share the common objective of collectively achieving climate neutrality by 2050. And this is something that Malta is convinced of. It is also part of the 5-pillar strategy that the current government has embarked on, and which was launched just a few months ago. But at the same time, as an island state, we are fully aware that climate action is essential if we are to avert significant adverse impacts over the next decade. But just to give you a clear picture from where we started, what was our starting point, until 10 years ago, deployment of renewable energy in Malta had almost no contribution. So for us, this is something relatively recent. As an island state, you would understand that we are surrounded by sea. For us, it's deep seas. We have a geomorphology which precludes the development of hydropower. We do not have any extended forestry, but we are lucky because we have around 3,000 hours of sunshine a year. And given this scenario, it soon became clear to Malta that solar renewable energy was the most effective resource. Now, with increasingly lower generation costs, renewable sources definitely increase a country's immunity to global shocks caused by fuel price hikes or shortages, thus ensuring a more stable environment which forms the basis of sustained economic growth. And this is particularly important for a small island like ours, which lacks conventional natural resources such as oil, gas, or minerals. There is the issue also of security of supply that requires that energy is made available when needed. Now, electricity generated from photovoltaic is already contributing to a sizable share during daytime peak demand. And apart from scaling up the share of renewable energy generation, the next challenge for us is to mitigate intermittence. And this is why we are looking at the potential of new technologies such as floating offshore wind and solar, as well as ramping up investment in battery storage. And this shall enable the grid to better integrate a higher share of renewable energy whilst mitigating short-term variability. But obviously, in the longer term, we need to look also at seasonal storage. And here, options are more limited, but with the global scaling up of green hydrogen, potential solutions are already in sight. Now, we are all aware also that science identifies islands as particularly particularly vulnerable to the impacts of climate change. And Malta's efforts towards decarbonization through the integration of renewable energy is not only driven by this concern, but also we are aware and appreciate that this is a global challenge that requires a concerted global effort. And I acknowledge that there are challenges to increase renewable energy generation, but I firmly believe that such challenges always present us with opportunities. And the close ties with the recent drive at European level reflected in the EU strategy on offshore renewable energy, and this is fully supported by the Clean Energy for EU Islands initiative, we are looking at opportunities for tapping EU funds under the Innovation Fund and also Connecting Europe facility, which has now been extended to cater for cross-border projects in the field of renewables. Now, Malta has sought to introduce renewable energy solutions within a more comprehensive energy management framework, which also promotes energy efficiency. Within this comprehensive framework, we see value in integrating renewable energies within the water, energy, food ecosystem nexus, in particular, since the size of islands permits the development of such highly integrated management system. And in this regard, we are willing to share our experiences in the application of such nexus with other IRENA members facing challenges similar to ours. And furthermore, we are also looking to further collaborate with IRENA to promote these integrated solutions within the Small Island Developing States Network. On a more global level, IRENA provides a perfect platform for increased cooperation, especially between islands, and such cooperation, we believe, can facilitate the energy transition through the exchange of best practices. We believe also in exchanging knowledge on effective solutions which are specifically adapted to the scale of each island and which can often take the form of demonstration projects. This is something we are really looking forward to as well, because we believe that in this context, islands can also showcase these demonstration projects which can then be scaled accordingly. Experience has shown that Malta has a lot in common with several other small islands. And I strongly believe that through close cooperation, we can overcome common challenges much more effectively. I'm sure that several of the challenges I referred to just now have been faced or are being faced by other islands and also coastal regions across the globe. And I believe that it is thanks to fora such as this one offered by IRENA that we can come together to discuss solutions and learn from one another on how best we can tackle these challenges. So it is within this context that Malta is seeking to broaden its collaboration with IRENA, because we believe that capacity building and sharing of information are key pillars for promoting and facilitating the uptake of renewable energy solutions. This contributes towards the development of optimized solutions such that together we can strive to achieve a carbon neutral economy. So thanks for this opportunity today, and I really look forward to more initiatives like this one where we can come together and share different experiences. Thanks and good afternoon once again.
Thank you so much, Minister Darling. Thank you for some of the exciting news, the lessons learned, and also how Malta is in part breaking new ground. And we very much look forward as a community of practitioners to learn more from you. And I can only say as head of UNDP, but also I know Francesco, island nations, island economies are a unique challenge in terms of these kinds of issues, but actually also unique opportunity. And the examples you gave us just now reaffirm that. Thank you very much.
Thanks,
and I would like to turn to another unique country, the Kingdom of Bhutan, and welcome very much His Excellency Mr. Loknath Sharma, the Minister of Economic Affairs. And Minister, it's a pleasure to welcome you in the IRENA Assembly. And I speak still with fond memories of my visit to your country and seeing what it means to be the first carbon neutral economy and country in the world. And obviously, as you look forward in terms of the developments that lie ahead for your country, for economic development opportunities, one of the questions obviously arises on how diversing from a reliance on hydropower to other energy sources while maintaining that extraordinary achievement of a carbon neutral economy is being pursued. And it obviously would also be very useful to understand that as a member of the LDC group, how you envisage the renewables as a driver of development and no longer as perhaps a constraint to generating the power that drives development. So, Minister, a great pleasure to welcome you to the Assembly. You have the floor.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. And also reminding me of my country and your visit to my country. I would also like to wish good afternoon to everyone present here today. Bhutan, as you all know, is situated in the Himalayas, so the climate change challenge is always there for us. In fact, fast melting glaciers, and this is posing a great threat to us. Nonetheless, hydropower, so far we have around 2,300 megawatts of hydropower completed and being generated, but it has its own ups and downs. The hydrology changes now and then, and also the climate change impact it has. Bhutan has committed to remain carbon neutral, and it is constitutionally mandated for us to keep our forest cover at 60%. Today, our CO2 emissions is around 2.2 million tons, and whereas we have a capacity to sequester around 8.6 million tons of CO2 every year. Therefore, I see that we will definitely remain carbon neutral, and this is what we have committed. However, as you highlighted, hydropower has been the single source of energy, though it is counted as renewable, but this is already facing challenges. Therefore, we are fast going into energy mix. The country has already developed plans to immediately, by another year or two, we are already in discussion with ADP to develop 75 megawatt of solar and wind power, where 23 megawatt will be wind, rest will be solar. Bhutan also has in capacity to develop around 12 gigawatt of solar power, and we are looking forward that this will happen as we go, because we have realized the energy mix very important as hydropower generations dwindle according to season, and it also depends upon the hydrology. Therefore, depending on one particular source of energy is not viable for us. We also have biogas plants, small household use biogas plants. We have around 6,000 domestic-sized biogas plants in operation. I have in my own house in the village. That's why I can say with guarantee that this will definitely give a boost to the rural economy as well. On the LDC group, yes, Bhutan is the chair, and then it is extended for a year. But as an LDC country, we face a lot of challenges, and in very recently, in September 2019, during UN Climate Action Summit, the Honorable Prime Minister Bhutan launched the LDC vision to be on climate resilient development pathways by 2030 and deliver net zero emissions by 2050. The LDCs have initiated three main initiatives, that is LDG, renewable energy and energy efficiency for sustainable development, LDC initiative for effective adaptation and resilience, LDC universities consortium on climate change. We're hoping that this will give a very good platform for the LDCs to come forward and do whatever they can. However, non-hydro renewable energy in my country as well as in these countries have become very costly, and also are mostly in very small scale technologies such as solar lanterns, PVC, standalone home system, so on and so forth. If we do not support them with funds, with expertise, with technicalities, and do not push forward, it will be very difficult for these countries to have these other alternate renewables as game changers. For Bhutan, we do have sustainable hydropower development policy. At the same time, we have alternate renewable energy policy, and ARENA has also helped us to do the renewable readiness report. Therefore, our focus now is to develop other renewable form of energy, particularly solar and wind. Therefore, we definitely need support of the bigger countries. We definitely need funding and technology, because this side of the country, it's moving fast in other renewables like India. So we are careful that these technologies will come to us in a cheaper way, and we'll be able to develop more. However, particular focus would be on these LDC countries to support by everyone, and Bhutan being the lead there, since Bhutan already has best is development in gross national happiness, and environment is one of the pillar there. In the environment conservation is must for our country. Therefore, we assure that whatever development we do hereafter, it will be green and it will be clean energy sources. Though we face the challenges of having fuel offsetting sometimes the renewable part, because we are a import dependent country and we use lots of fuel. Slowly, we are also trying to use more electricity in place of fuel and other renewable energies, particularly, as I mentioned, solar. With this, our intention is very clear. Bhutan's intention is very clear that energy security is must. For energy security to be must, alternate renewable energies or energy mix is a must. We cannot depend only on hydropower, and we have already made our path ready. We are already in discussion to develop around 75 megawatt. I'm sure this will come very fast. All these LDCs country have to have
wrap up. Sorry.
Policy coherence and then support from other countries. Thank you for now. Thank you.
Sorry, I didn't mean to bring you to a sharp break. I'm just giving a signal. Let me point out, our colleagues in IRENA have also installed on the right-hand side of the podium, which I think is such an elegant way, Francesco, to present us here. Congratulations. I almost feel I'm there. A little clock, so it starts always when you speak, and then you can also monitor, and I will continue to put that yellow hand up at the 4-minute mark. Minister, thank you so much. First of all, for the inspiring work that the Kingdom of Bhutan has been pursuing in that green path of development, but also as it faces the challenge of its energy supplies into the future, the diversification in a highly decentralized setting also of where people live. I mean, having visited the kingdom, I realized that it is not just an economic policy, it's a geographical challenge as much as an inclusion challenge to reach everyone, and very inspiring progress. Thank you for being with us at the Assembly today. It's now my great pleasure to turn to Inger Andersen, the Executive Director of the UN Environment Programme, a dear friend and colleague to all of us, but also Francesco, I know, to IRENA. UNEP, Inger has been at the forefront over decades, really, in laying the groundwork for countries to conceive of a cleaner energy economy. And I think one of the things that would perhaps be very useful to understand is how you see the NDCs evolving right now, a partnership in which we all work very closely together, but also what you are observing in terms of the challenges that countries face in scaling up renewables to drive this energy transition. Inger, I don't yet see you on the podium, but I hope you will appear right now, but the floor is yours. Welcome.
With some good luck, I should. Thank you very much, Akim, ministers, excellencies, and dear Francesco. It is a real pleasure and honor to speak today at this very important assembly. And I come to you with a few messages. The first, obviously, is that it is absolutely key to accelerate this energy transition right now. And this is why you're all here and what you're all determined to do. Our recent emissions gap report made it clear that if we do nothing other than what our current policies are saying that we would do, i.e. the Paris promise of 2015, we are hitting towards a degree increase of 3.5 degrees. If we do what we promised, full implementation of the NDCs, then we could reach that 3.5. But if we heed the calls of the Net Zero Club, which today has over 125 countries that have made that promise, well, then it begins to look a little bit better at 2.7 degrees. If the US comes in and also makes a net zero commitment, then we are at 2.5 to 2.6 degrees. So ministers, excellencies, even with the net zero, and even with what we have in the NDCs today, We need to, as we heard from Mrs. Espinosa, make that stretch in the next NDCs, because even with where we are today, we are not where we need to be. And that is where the renewable energy promise comes in with such powerful content. So we need now to make sure that we address energy, because as we know, energy production and use is the single biggest contributor to global warming, accounting for 2/3 of human-induced greenhouse gas emissions. And so all the promises of net zero are very, very powerful and very strong. But as I also said, I can promise in January that I will run a marathon in December. But unless I train every day and put into action and implement and make a plan and implement that plan, it will not happen. And so the plan is the NDC, and that is the plan that has to be now prepared, funded, submitted, and implemented. And so integrating ambitious energy transition strategies in the process of building back on COVID, in the process of all the resources that we are putting into our economies, becomes critical. We don't need new technologies, they already exist. We don't need to invent new things, except a few things on storage, but nevertheless, because it exists, we need to implement what we have known for generations at this point. Children born today know of these technologies. We just need to make it happen. And today, as we heard from speakers before me, we are borrowing from the next generation an extraordinary amount of money to restart our economies. Surely we are not going to leave the next generation both with an immense debt and also a broken planet. And you, Excellencies, you hold the key to that future promise. You hold the key because it is in your hands to make those shifts towards renewable energy. We cannot afford that fallacy that there's a trade-off on the one hand between sustainability and on the other hand between economic growth. That is so old and so now obviously no longer a point that has any relevance in the discourse. The only way forward is to make a sustainable and renewable the driver of economic growth, the cornerstone of building back better, the essence of the future that we want. But we are not where we want to be, because we released the production gap report recently, UNEP, that measures what is the projected production of hydrocarbons and what is it that where we need to be. And that is not showing a good picture. And indeed, if we look at where stimulus funding has gone, we can say that 230 billion in COVID-19 measures went to sectors responsible for fossil fuel production and consumption, and less than half of that, or around half of that, went to clean energy. So renewable energy is eating away at fossil fuels domination, but we are not there. So in conclusion, Akim, change is possible, but we need more action, and it's in your hands. I applaud you for leaning in, for being present, for showing the way, for finding a way forward. But what we're doing globally is still not enough. We need to increase action. We need to grow the net zero club, but like that marathoner, we need to start training and implementing now. So with that, ministers, let me thank you very much for this opportunity, and rest assured that we at UNEP will work together with all our friends at IRENA in the rest of the UN system, and of course with you in support of the future we want. Thank you.
Inge, thank you so much for your remarks. Thank you also to UNEP for the excellent reports and analysis that it is providing to the world and allowing itself to pace, and for the vision with which you continue to lead this discussion of a transition. It's now my pleasure to turn to Mr. Fitzgerald Cantero Piali, the National Energy Director of Uruguay, whom we warmly welcome to the Assembly. Good afternoon, no, good morning. We are on the same time zone, so we're also almost having a similar...
Buenas tardes. Es un gusto para mí.
Good afternoon. It is truly a pleasure to represent the ambassador, and he was unable to attend this panel discussion, but he extends his warmest welcome, his warmest greetings to all of you, to the members of the Assembly, to General Director Mr. Francesco La Camera and all of the staff that have worked so hard to make this assembly a success. In addition to the Paris Agreement, which has been mentioned, we have established very ambitious objectives in Uruguay. The IPCC has showed that carbon neutrality for 2050 is essential so that we can avoid reaching those temperatures that were just mentioned by the previous speaker. So in order to do this, we need to make sure that we avoid increasing the use of fossil fuels and allow our economies to continue to grow, and of course allow for social fair policies to be put in place. So Uruguay is well on the road to its transition with the decarbonization of its electrical power supply, and we have reached an average of 97% over the past 4 years, which is an amazing accomplishment. And we also have 37% of our energy mix based on solar and wind sources. And the second stage of our energy transition is going to lead us to a number of very important challenges in the coming years. We need to make sure that we develop hydrogen-based solutions, and renewables are a much larger share of our energy mix, as well as to make sure that we look at long-term goals for industries to be encouraged to rely upon renewable energy sources. And I would like to say a few words about our raw materials, and very closely linked to decarbonization in Uruguay is to focus on that 37%, which I mentioned earlier, the solar and wind energy sources that of course the transport sector needs to rely less on fossil fuels. We need to increase the mix on renewables for the transport sector. So we're encouraging all kinds of incentives are being put in place to encourage electric vehicles and hydrogen fueled vehicles, especially those for heavy industrial and long distance transport. Both seafaring vessels as well as land transport are going to be able to make the most of these new hydrogen fuel technologies. We're looking at batteries, electric battery vehicles. Electric vehicles, we feel, are an important contribution to transitioning towards a cleaner transport economy. And we're also being called upon to put in place hydrogen fuel vehicles. We already have a number of trucks and lorries on our highways using these, and we're also looking at synthetic fuels, which are under development, which is also going to be in the short to mid-term another alternative that we would like to see in a greater dimension in our country. We're also working on raw material diversification, different minerals and chemicals that can contribute to this, ethanol and other alternative fuels. So in a nutshell, I would just like to say that Uruguay is making huge strides and making an enormous effort to put these new technologies in place. And from our stance in Uruguay, we feel that we are in that second stage where we are really making the most of the momentum we've already achieved, and the decarbonization of our economy is a realistic goal, we believe. And I think that using green sources of energy, green raw materials, is really the direction we're working towards. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Director Piali, for sharing with us Uruguay's ambition of reaching that 100% of electricity from renewables, but also the way that you have described the initiatives in the transport sector and the electrification of the end-use sector. All these are components of that national ambition that you have outlined, and we thank you very much for sharing them with us here today at the Assembly. It's now my pleasure to turn next to Her Excellency Dr. Gloria Magombo, the Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Energy and Power Development in Zimbabwe. Minister Mangwanane, welcome to the Assembly, and it's a pleasure to have you, and you have the virtual floor. Please go ahead.
Good day. Thank you for having me. We thank IRENA through the Director General for working tirelessly to ensure that the operations of IRENA and this Assembly have been put together against this pandemic, which has kept us apart, as a way of reducing the impact and the deaths which the world has been facing on a daily basis. I am from Zimbabwe. We are a Southern African country, which is a growing economy. We have just completed the development of the low greenhouse gas emission development strategy, which will be covering the year 2020 to 2050. And this strategy was developed against, in response to the global climate change crisis. And for us, energy sector remains the biggest contributor to the greenhouse gas emissions as a country. We are committing ourselves as a nation to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions by 2030 by a total of about 33%. Whilst we are doing this, we are also recognizing the fact that we remain a country whose energy mix also still includes that of thermal power plants. We are in the process of building an additional 600 megawatts of coal, but at the same time, we have a strategy to bring in an additional 1,200 megawatts of large hydro through the development of a project which we refer to as the Batoka project, which we share together with Zambia. It is important to note that whilst we are looking at electricity as the main subsector, we are also doing a lot of work with regards to increasing access in rural communities, where currently as a country we have 44% access to modern energy, especially in terms of electrification. But we have developed a rural energy master plan, which looks into achieving universal access by 2030, not just through grid extensions, but also development of off-grid systems, which are solar powered and hybrid systems as well. As part of the list of the mitigation measures which the country is looking at and will be coordinating together through an integrated resource plan, we have planned also to bring in a lot of PV solar at utility level, where we are developing a competitive procurement framework, which will be launched later this year, where we are inviting for bids for people to come in and develop solar through as independent power producers. We have also working on a strategy to maximize the use of waste, and we are developing biogas digesters, especially targeting municipal waste. And we are also looking at a strategy of developing an e-mobility strategy, and we have received funding from development partners who will be working with us to ensure that we have this strategy ready by mid-2021. And that will also look at hydrogen vehicles. But we are also looking at developing a local biofuels program, where we are already blending our fuel at 20%, and we intend to increase the production of biodiesel. And to that effect, we have increased the hectarage in terms of what we need to plant to ensure we have increased access. Over and above, from an agricultural point of view, we are moving towards solar water pumping, and we have launched a solar water heating program, which will ensure that we are able to increase the access to renewables. I would like to acknowledge the fact that we have been working closely with IRENA, and to that, we are looking for further collaboration with regards to capacity building and technical guidance in the development of the long-term energy planning scenarios. And we are also working together to assist us in finalizing the renewable readiness assessment and also capacity building for project facilitation tools. We are ready to work together. I'm concluding now with all the various partners to ensure that we have sufficient funding to implement this ambitious program which we are working with. And we look forward to ensuring that we bring in new investors into the economy. Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much, Permanent Secretary. Thank you for sharing with us Zimbabwe's journey, also highlighting universal access to energy for many economies, still a top priority, and how off-grid solar, as you refer to, could be a way of accelerating the meeting of that target. We thank you very much for joining the Assembly today, and it is now my pleasure to turn to His Excellency Mr. David Twalabaishvili. He is the Deputy Minister of Economy and Sustainable Development in Georgia. And again, to you, Deputy Minister, the request to share that ambition of Georgia in terms of transition, and particularly also using renewable energy in its end-use sectors to be able to meet those climate ambitions. So over to you, and we very much look forward to listening to you. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Steiner. Thank you for the honor of the invitation. Of course, I'm pleased to participate in the 11th session of the International Renewable Energy Agency Assembly, which is a global platform for giving the opportunity for the diverse discussions on all aspects of the energy transition. The international best practice shows the sustainable energy development and transition to sustainable energy is a step forward to a low-emission economy, as it is about using energy wisely and using energy generated from clean energy sources and technologies. Nevertheless, sustainable energy development is not only renewable energy utilization, it is synergies between energy efficiency, renewable energy technology, and policy, which require availability of resources, proper investment, and strong political will, as well as cooperation among countries and the regions. The energy sector of Georgia is in active phase of development and fundamental reforms and changes. Our aim is the full and effective utilization of significant untapped renewable energy potential of the country. The estimated annual generation from hydro resources is equivalent to 50 billion kilowatt hours. And besides, Georgia has significant potential of wind, solar, biomass, and geothermal resources. In order to meet increasing energy demand of my country, to overcome the winter deficit and to decrease the dependence on imported energy resources, we are developing additional generation facilities. At this moment, up to 140 renewable energy projects under the development. Alongside with the renewable energy development, we are working to increase and introduce the energy efficiency within the country. In 2019 and 2020, the Parliament of Georgia has adopted three very important laws regarding energy efficiency. Right now, we are in the process of the development of bylaws and necessary legal acts required by these laws. We are preparing together with the European Union the Energy and Climate Integrated Plan, so-called NECP, and we are in the process of drafting of this document right now. And this document will set the targets for 2030 in 5 dimensions, such as energy efficiency, energy security, internal energy market, decarbonization, research and development, and competitiveness. Georgia has ratified the Paris Agreement in 2017. It has committed to a voluntary, non-conditional obligation to reduce its greenhouse gas emissions by 15% by 2030. And this target can be increased up to 25%, subject to a global agreement, access to affordable financial resources, and technology transfer. The 25% reduction from the business as usual scenario would also ensure that Georgia's greenhouse gas emissions by 2030 would stay by 40% below 1990 levels. In 2015, energy-related emissions accounted for 62% of Georgia's total greenhouse gas emissions, not including effects from land use, of course. This increase from the early 2000s, when it was around 50%, can be attributed mainly to higher energy consumption in the transport sector. The renewable energy sector has a significant role in fulfilling the obligations outlined in the Paris Agreement. According to the law of Georgia on promoting the production and the use of energy from renewable sources, the total share of the energy from the renewable sources should comprise 35% in the final energy generation by 2030. Also, the share of energy received from the renewable sources in consumption by all modes of transport should comprise at least 10% of the final energy consumption by 2030. Finally, we would like to express our gratitude to International Renewable Energy Agency for the support provided throughout our partnership. We are keen to learn more in the international experience and best practices on climate and energy planning. Georgia will surely continue active cooperation with the agency in future to accelerate the energy efficiency and renewable energy policy implementation. And we believe that energy transition in Georgia is happening in a sustainable manner, which will ultimately benefit future generations. Thank you very much for your attention and wish you a successful day. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Tvalabashvili, for sharing some of those insights and also having that map of an ambitious 10-year network behind you. I've been studying it as you were speaking. We appreciate your sharing your experiences today. Let me now turn to His Excellency Mr. Inder Sekar Chaturvedi, the Secretary for New and Renewable Energy of India, to share with us what we already have heard your Prime Minister yesterday, your Minister speak about the immensely ambitious plans for expanding renewable energy targets in India, but embedded in a larger energy transition strategy. So it is my great pleasure to invite the Secretary to address the Assembly. Over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. Let me take this opportunity to talk about India's plans, excuse me, for renewable energy and energy transition. As you said, our targets are very ambitious, 175 gigawatt of installed RE capacity by 2022. And this will result in abatement of around 326 million tons of carbon dioxide every year. We also have this goal of 450 gigawatt by 2030, and this is 450 gigawatt of installed renewable energy capacity. These are huge targets, and we recognize that we'll need to overcome formidable challenges in reaching our goals. At the same time, we are confident that we will be able to achieve what we have set out for us. And this confidence is based on our performance in the last few years. Over the last about 6 years or so, 6.5 years, our installed RE capacity has gone up 2.6 times. In the same period, our solar capacity has increased about 14 times. Today, we are the 4th in the world in terms of installed RE capacity, and 4th and 5th respectively in installed wind and solar capacities. Reaching our huge targets would obviously require action on multiple fronts, and we have plans for action in a diverse set of RE areas. We have been enforcing renewable purchase obligations, or RPOs as we call them. They mandate that the distribution companies in our states are required to have a minimum share of renewable energy in their electricity mix. This mechanism has contributed substantially to our renewable energy achievements in the last few years. We are considering whether we need to extend this beyond 2022 also. We have a very major scheme of solarizing agriculture. The Kusum scheme, as we call it, will create about 30 gigawatt of additional demand and supply of renewable energy over the next 2 to 3 years. It involves de-dieselization of agriculture pumps, establishment of solar power plants by farmers or groups of farmers, solarization of existing grid-connected pumps, and solarization of agriculture feeders. The scheme will not only help farmers enhance their income and reduce environmental pollution, but will also reduce the subsidy burden of states, making it attractive to switch to the scheme. We have a scheme called FAME, Faster Adoption and Manufacture of Electric Vehicles. This is expected to cause addition of a large number of electric vehicles over the next 10 years and will create a new demand of about 15 gigawatt of electricity. We hope to meet a large part of this demand from green electricity. The solar rooftop scheme hopes to achieve 40 gigawatt of installed rooftop capacity by 2022. We have not done as well as we had wished to, but we hope that the scheme will pick up in the coming days. We have waived transmission charges for RE projects till June 2023, so they become more attractive for the distribution companies, so that it becomes more attractive for the distribution companies to purchase renewable energy. We have a dedicated scheme for building transmission infrastructure for evacuation of renewable energy. We call it the Green Energy Corridor Scheme, and that has also helped in adding to our RE capacities. We have also been and will work to facilitate private investment in renewable energy. Our system of auctions, governed by a set of transparent guidelines, has fetched us handsome returns. Now, this system entails a procurement, an intermediary procurer who purchases on behalf of the DISCOMs and then sells to DISCOMs, reducing risks and acting in a transparent manner. We have permitted foreign direct investment up to 100% under the automatic route in renewable energy. We have a dispensation for solar parks, which provide a plug and play facility for solar power developers to install renewable energy projects. We will continue taking similar measures towards ease of business for RE developers. We also recognize that our strategies will need to be flexible to accommodate new technologies. Developments in areas such as storage and hydrogen might result in the need for reworking our plans. In fact, it will be important for us to gain experience in emerging areas, even while large-scale commercial deployment is not possible. For example, we are already working on making use of hydrogen and green ammonia. Solar tariffs have rapidly fallen in India. We recently discovered a record low tariff of rupees 1.99 per kilowatt hour. This should help our efforts. As far as coal is concerned, it is currently an important source for meeting India's large energy requirements, both for electricity generation and non-electricity uses. It is likely to remain essential for India's development needs and energy security for quite some time. It is projected that even with 450 gigawatt of installed capacity, installed RE capacity, which we project by 2030, a large part of our electricity generation will be coal-based. While we have large coal deposits, we are also acutely conscious of the pressing need for fighting climate change. With these words, Mr. Chairman, let me conclude. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Secretary Chaturvedi, for these quite remarkable figures and clearly a continued ambition for energy transition transformations across the full sectors that you described. And we certainly, I think, are all very fascinated by what made these changes possible in such a short time, and certainly the continued ambition, including with India also being a partner to a growing number of countries in their own energy transitions. Thank you so much. It's now my pleasure to invite Ambassador Pietro Benassi, the Chief Advisor to the Prime Minister of Italy on COP26 and the G20, which seems like an ideal combination, Ambassador, and we obviously welcome you very much to share with us some of the energy transition priorities for the Italian G20 presidency, how Italy will partner with the UK as the host of COP26, and to also perhaps reflect a little bit on that combination between energy policy transition and that world of finance that so often is associated with the G20, because I know that under your presidency, you have also brought some new emphasis on sustainable finance, which will be so critical to enable these transitions to happen. Ambassador, it's a pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And first of all, I would like to thank the International Renewable Energy Agency and its General Director, Francesco La Camera, for inviting me to contribute to this session. I want to wish you every success for the 11th General Assembly. And thank to you, Mr. Chairman, for posing some important questions. As all you know, the Italian G20 presidency started at the beginning of December, and I'm very happy to have this opportunity to exchange some views and thoughts with you. We are working with our British colleagues to make the most of our respective G7 and G20 presidencies and our co-chairing of COP26. As presidency of the G20, we are called to bring the membership together, which is not a like-minded membership, as everybody knows, to perform a series of complicated tasks, starting from recreating momentum for multilateral cooperation and ensuring a sustainable recovery from the pandemic. The level of commitment that we will reach in 2021 will have a lasting impact, according to our opinion, and is very likely to shape our common action for at least the next decade. We are called upon to accelerate our efforts to fight climate change in an extremely complex context. We are facing a crisis unprecedented in scale and magnitude, which we need to address and transform into an opportunity, paving the way for a more just and sustainable future. As many of you know already, the concept we have developed to frame our G20 presidency hinges around what we call the 3 Ps: people, planet, and prosperity. The overall aim is to unite the wide-ranging sectors covered by the G20 by including each of them in this broader vision by keeping all 3 pillars in mind at all times. We will also keep health high on the agenda as a cross-cutting issue. Replying to your questions, the connections between climate and energy is a crucial and emblematic point of contact between these 3 pillars. This is why we have decided to tackle the strategic nexus between energy and climate in a holistic fashion by combining the work streams and aiming for joint and coherent deliverables under this G20 exercise. Our presidency will work closely with members on 3 priorities. First, advancing towards a sustainable and green recovery, seizing the opportunities offered by innovative energy technological solutions. The G20 in particular will investigate the potential impacts of a green approach in the recovery funds of the G20 countries, analyzing the national recovery plans, the review of the nationally determined contribution for the long-term low-emission strategies in view of the COP26 deadlines. We will also examine the potential of new energy technologies and the contribution of research and innovation in new fields, notably offshore renewables and multiple forms of ocean energy, and their contribution towards a decarbonized energy system, in addition to the use of decarbonized hydrogen, with a special attention to hydrogen from renewable energy sources. Second, we want to foster the role played by sustainable and smart cities. Urban areas provide an ideal scale and context to test and deploy circular economy approaches. We will assess, especially in highly urbanized contexts, the use of nature-based solutions that offer the opportunity to combine emission reductions and adaptations with positive impacts on health protection and quality of life. We will aim to boost energy efficiency in buildings, sustainable mobility solutions, and the spread of renewables. Third, making use of the opportunities offered by the COVID-19 crisis to accelerate the alignment of global capital flows towards a green transition. One of our main priorities for the climate action agenda will be the reorientation of global financial flows in the direction of a sustainable transition in a spirit of synergy between the public and private sectors. The post-COVID-19 reconstruction offers an unprecedented opportunity to accelerate the shift of the global financial flows in the direction of climate neutrality and resilience to climate change. As far as the role of agency like IRENA can play is concerned, I would like to conclude by stressing that we see and we are convinced that agencies like IRENA have a critical role to play in leading the fight against climate change and environmental degradation. In particular, we are conscious that IRENA is well equipped to provide knowledge, tools, and support to member countries in increasing the share of renewable energy in their power sectors. IRENA plays a fundamental role in promoting innovation as a boost to speed up the energy transition and providing capacity building support. For this reason, our presidency in G20 is involving IRENA, together with other important agencies, to develop key contributions on accelerated deployment of ocean energy and offshore renewables, on the role of the cities in promoting renewable energies, on the role of hydrogen for a decarbonized energy system, on power system flexibility, and on universal access to energy.
Ambassador, time, please. Sorry.
Yes. Given this scale, we are obliged to move at 360 degrees effort. And the broad membership of the G20 will allow us to discuss and take a difficult decision that need to be taken if we collectively are to meet the Paris Agreement objectives. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Benassi, not only for recognizing the key role that IRENA can play, but also for the unique moment in which Italy has taken the presidency of the G20, is working with the COP26, and the intersection between these two processes being, not least in the context of COVID-19, the scramble for an economic recovery, providing this unique window perhaps of an internationally aligned effort. So we wish you all the best in the leadership that Italy will bring to these discussions, and appreciate very much your joining the Assembly today. Mille grazie. It is now my pleasure to invite His Excellency Mr. Lars Andreas Lunde, the State Secretary in the Ministry of Petroleum and Energy of Norway. And State Secretary, welcome to the IRENA Assembly. And clearly with Norway, we have both the economy of the 20th century and the economy of the 21st century coinciding. And obviously we are very keen to hear how, in looking forward to the future, Norway continues its drive of an energy transition and the role of renewable energy within that scenario. State Secretary, the floor is yours.
Moderator, thank you very much for giving me the floor. Even with the strong attention to COVID-19, it is very important to continue to discuss energy access and climate mitigation in a holistic way, to be able to meet the challenges that will still be with us post-COVID-19. Because by the end of this year, the world will hopefully be out of the pandemic, thanks to progress in vaccination. But the climate challenge, however, will still be with us for many more years. It is therefore important that the present pandemic does not make us lose focus on the climate challenge. It is important that in these economic stimulus packages that many countries are now designing, that they bring us out of the crisis, but they also prepare us for a better, greener, and more climate resilient world post COVID-19. Through economic stimulus packages in Norway, support has therefore been included to energy-related activities and new strategies that will foster energy transition and will mitigate negative effects of COVID-19. As one of the first countries in the world, Norway submitted an updated national determined contribution in February last year. Our enhanced 2030 target is to reduce our emissions with at least 50% and towards 55% compared to 1990 levels. Cooperation is key if we are to succeed in limiting global warming in line with the targets in the Paris Agreement. Earlier this month, the Norwegian government launched a white paper presenting a comprehensive climate action plan covering the period 2021 to 2030. This plan presents how Norway will achieve its climate target for 2030 and at the same time creating green growth. The government proposes several strengthened policies in important areas to accelerate reductions in greenhouse gas emissions. The main instruments are taxation of greenhouse gas emissions, regulatory measures, climate-related requirements in public procurement, information on climate-friendly options, financial support for the development of new technologies, and initiatives to promote research and innovation. In the energy-related sectors, I would like to mention some areas that should be of interest. A few months ago, Norway launched a major carbon capture and storage project, the Longship project. We have also supported financially a floating wind power plant, the Hywind Tampen. This is based on technology piloted by Equinor and which is now under development to provide electricity to 2 oil fields operations in the North Sea. Norway's energy resources have for more than a century been a major source for economic development and wealth in Norway. This is both from renewable energy sources like hydropower, but also from the last decades from our oil and gas industry. So, as you said, Mr. Moderator, now we are moving into a new phase, and it's time to look at the new opportunities of new energy technologies and energy transition and the opportunities that they bring us. So, before the coming summer, the government will therefore put forward a white paper to Parliament on long-term value creation and industrial development based on our energy resources, addressing, among others, offshore wind, hydrogen, and carbon capture and storage. In my view, we can implement a sound energy transition that secures jobs, value creation, and technology development at the same time. Thank you very much, and good luck with the conference.
Thank you so much, State Secretary Lund, and thank you again for the role that Norway is playing also not only in its own context, but in the international community with its development partners in accelerating these transitions that have become very much part of Norway's own commitment to the climate change agenda, but as you said, to access to energy and these just transitions. Thank you for addressing the Assembly. It is now my pleasure to turn to my dear colleague and friend, Fekita Mueloa Utoy Kamano, who is the Under-Secretary General and High Representative of the office that looks particularly at the perspectives and interests of small island developing states, least developed countries, and landlocked developing countries. A group that, when you add them all up, Fekita, as you will, I'm sure, remind us, is a group of 91 countries, a not insignificant number, and many of them also part of the IRENA family. And it is therefore my great pleasure to invite you to address the Assembly. Fekita.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, Akim. And of course, these 91 countries are especially vulnerable to the impacts of climate change. The irony, of course, is they have the least contributed to greenhouse gas concentrations, and notwithstanding their many challenges, they're also at the forefront of climate action. And this was again demonstrated during the Secretary General Summit on Climate Change, where the 38 SIDS and the 47 LDCs made commitments to reach net zero emissions by 2050. OHRLS, together with UNDP and UN Energy, support the implementation of these initiatives. And some of you have heard me say this before, but I cannot stress enough how acceleration of SDG 7 achievement in alignment with SDG 13 on climate change and the Paris Agreement is a top priority for my office. OHR LLS is committed to mobilize resources and build partnerships to give a helping hand to energy transition in the most vulnerable countries. Allow me to share one example. In 2019, together with the government of Malawi and the Rocky Mountain Institute, OHR LLS launched a study which shows how through the whole system, energy investment planning countries such as Malawi can achieve SDGs through the use of abundant renewable resources. The study identified least cost pathways for developing this infrastructure. It shows how US $3 billion of investment from a range of sources can make this possible. We now work with the UN office in Malawi to support the government to implement the recommendations of this study. The effort was well received, and we're now looking to scale up this study to cover the LDC group as a whole. Our broad aim is to develop broad policy recommendations and advocacy tools so that other countries can benefit from the experiences and approaches adopted in Malawi. Quite importantly, all this will feed into the thematic preparations for the upcoming LDC 5 conference in Qatar, Doha, in January 2022. The conference is a strategic opportunity to place sustainable energy as a thematic priority for a new 10-year program for the LDCs. And I can already share with you that the private sector track of the LDC 5 conference will have a dedicated session on energy and climate change. And the goal is to generate new partnerships to support energy transition and climate action in the LDCs. If we want to be successful, we must engage with all stakeholders in this important process. In terms of how can agencies such as IRENA partner with OHRLS to support these groups of countries in energy transition? The global energy transition is underway. Unfortunately, the most vulnerable countries to date rarely benefit from the ongoing large-scale investments, and progress remains largely concentrated in the more advanced developing and middle-income countries. So we really must do more because there is a tremendous growth potential in the energy sector in these 91 countries. Their endowments with natural resources such as solar, hydro, geothermal, and wind are tremendous. And what is now required is a radical change of pace, massive investments in the energy sector, and capacity building over the next few years. Let me add that in line with the context of the COVID recovery, there is also a great opportunity for governments to center recovery plans on energy transition. And we all know how energy transition is a conduit for poverty alleviation, increasing resilience of healthcare systems, including in fighting this and future pandemics, and to build back better. So it is now that countries need strong support from the international community. We must be there to improve access to finance, build capacity, and assist developers in the preparation of bankable renewable energy projects. Urgent action is also required to strengthen or develop enabling environments and institutional frameworks. And I think these are all actions that can help to build and further expand and deepen initiatives such as IRENA's SIDS Lighthouse initiative. IRENA is indeed a key partner in enhancing support to the most vulnerable groups of countries. And building on strong collaboration, IRENA and OHRLS signed a MOU on areas of cooperation focusing on energy connectivity, supporting NDCs, just transition in harnessing energies, interlinkages with other SDGs over the next 5 years. And we are working together with IRENA to prepare a report to be launched this year on scaling up renewables in the landlocked developing countries. As I mentioned earlier, we reach out to stakeholders from the international community and the public and private sector to contribute to the LDC 5 conference in January 2022 and to make concrete announcements on energy and climate change. OHR-LLS, together with our partners, are committed to make LDCs, LLDCs and SIDS an integral part of the global energy transition that is underway. Thank you very much, Akim.
Thank you so much, and very good to hear about the close collaboration also between your office and IRENA, and thank you for highlighting the particular concerns of the countries that you also represent. It's now my pleasure to turn to Pablo Vieira, the Executive Director of the NDC Partnership, and somebody that we work very closely with in UNDP. I know our colleagues in IRENA do, and many others. It is a partnership, Pablo, that you coordinate involving many different actors. It would obviously be interesting to hear from you this morning also, or this afternoon, depending on wherever you are, how the evidence from the NDCs as it is emerging right now signals energy transition, across the board, or where do you see particular patterns also emerging that are of particular interest to an IRENA assembly also. So Pablo, welcome, and the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Akim. Thank you for the introduction, for the question. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, DG La Camera, for inviting the NDC partnership to this very, very important discussion. I am delighted to join you in this ministerial meeting, especially given the deep collaboration that the NDC partnership has enjoyed over the past few years with IRENA, with UNDP, and with many countries and institutions that are actually participating in this panel. We are, of course, living through extraordinary challenging times. Most of the countries that we support are facing today health, economic, and budgetary crises, as well as a much more challenging environment for accessing finance and capital for climate action. And they are rightly focused on the near-term human and economic cost of the COVID pandemic. But the climate crisis, as many of you have said before, the longer-term and more damaging one has not gone away. This is why during the past year, countries have been planning for more ambitious climate action through their revised, updated NDCs, despite the political and financial resources being pulled to more immediate priorities. So to a remarkable extent, they have succeeded. And this is thanks in large part to the support that has been mobilized through our members, the members of the partnership. Amongst this, IRENA has been one of the most active. Through the Climate Action Enhancement Package, or CAP, the NDC partnership is supporting 65 countries to improve the quality and increase the ambition of their updated NDCs. A total of 46 countries and institutions are providing the technical and financial support that is requested by these countries. And IRENA is one of them. Through CAP, IRENA was able to multiply its impact by accessing funding from the Technical Assistance Fund established by the partnership to support NDC enhancement, and is supporting almost 50 activities in 25 different countries on energy-related elements in their NDCs. This is in addition to IRENA acting under the Climate Promise with UNDP in supporting many other countries. This has enabled countries to benefit from IRENA's world-class expertise, further positioning the energy sector as a priority for reducing emissions and adapting to climate change. The energy transition is front and center for any country planning ambitious climate action. All of CAP sector's specific requests have focused on reducing emissions and increasing resilience in countries, and 24% of this request were focused on energy explicitly, more than any other sector. Let me give a small sample of the kind of support that IRENA is supporting under CAP. IRENA is conducting energy audits to better understand energy and emissions data and gaps in Nigeria, Uganda, Mozambique, Belize, amongst others. It is developing and strengthening MRV systems for more accurate energy and emissions reporting in Tonga, Zambia, and Ecuador, amongst others. To mobilize investments for clean energy, IRENA is supporting the development of project pipelines in Sao Tome and Principe, and organizing investment forums in East Africa to bring projects and investors together. But IRENA's work doesn't just deliver analysis. It is also building lasting in-country capacities. In Grenada, for example, it is training local stakeholders to carry out energy management and audits in the tourism, finance, and building sectors. This is very encouraging, but there's still a lot that needs to be done. Countries have stepped up with improved and more ambitious NDCs, but for successful implementation of these commitments, finance needs to be mobilized at a very large scale. Countries need support to develop implementation strategies and roadmaps, And above all, to prioritize and prepare energy projects for financing. We need to bring a wide range of finance from both public and private sectors. For IRENA and the NDC partnership, this is a central priority for the next few years. COVID and its disruptions are far from past. Economic recovery will be a central priority for everyone in the coming years, and it's a huge opportunity to drive climate action. But countries have shown their determination to increase the scale of climate action while building back better. And the NDC partnership, led by key members such as IRENA and UNDP, are showing the financial, technical, and knowledge resources that can be mobilized effectively to support them. This is grounds for hope at a time where hope is greatly needed. So thank you very much for the opportunity of being here, and I wish you the best success during this assembly.
Pablo, thank you for your comments. Thank you for your hopeful note. And thank you also for pointing out how effective partnerships can be, because they, in a sense, expand the scope for leveraging the resources and assets of different players across this global common challenge. So we appreciate very much the convening and the support that the NDC partnership has brought to so many countries. It is now my pleasure to invite in a pre-recorded statement the Minister of Energy and Mineral Resources of Indonesia, His Excellency Mr. Arifin Tasrif, on energy transformation in Indonesia and its key drivers. Colleagues, if you could please press the start button.
Excellencies, Ministers and Ambassadors, Director General of IRENA, representative from the United Nations and other international organizations, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, greetings from Jakarta. Indonesia has diverse and abundant renewable energy sources for more than 400 gigawatts, spreading almost all over the areas of Indonesia. Until today, it's been utilized for more than 10 gigawatt or approximately 2.5%. However, within the last 2 years, the realization of installed capacity tends to increase due to the decrease of solar and wind technology costs. We do realize that we need to act and start early to maximize the implementation of renewable energy, not only for the next generation, but also for substituting fossil fuel. Within the last 5 years, utilization of renewable energy and coal in the country tend to increase, while oil and gas tend to decline. Therefore, we need to focus on fast installation and competitive prices to accelerate renewable energy development to achieve 22% by 2025 and 31% by 2050. Renewable energy should be no longer viewed as a mere commodity. It should be considered as the key driver of economic growth, especially for post-COVID recovery. Participation of private companies, state-owned companies, public-private partnership, international organizations, including regional government, is urgently required in the development of renewable energy, especially to fulfill the growing energy demand in all sectors. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, energy demand in Indonesia has been increasing significantly to almost 25% in the past 5 years. Electricity demand per capita also grew for 20% higher in 2019 compared to 2015. However, 90% of the total energy use has been derived from fossil fuel. Therefore, the energy transition is utterly important, and a number of efforts are prepared to address. Namely, first, primary final energy substitution by using the existing technology, such as B30, B50 mandatory, co-firing, RDF utilization. Second, fossil primary energy conversion by transforming conventional power plant technology. Third, new NRE installed capacity to fulfill demand by focusing on solar power plant. Fourth, non-electricity, non-biofuel utilization, such as briquette, agricultural product drying, and biogas. In addition to that, Indonesia is also currently drafting a grand strategy for the development of energy sector to achieve ideal targets in terms of energy security, energy mix, emission reductions, and future economic impacts. The grand strategy emphasizes on national energy demand, improving on trade balance, as well as development of energy infrastructure according to current economic trend of renewable energy. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I'm pleased to note that 2018, IRENA signed a memorandum of understanding with ASEAN as one of ASEAN member states who is also a member of IRENA. Indonesia sees the MOU is a breakthrough to accelerate Southeast Asia's renewable energy development. Southeast Asia is considered as one of the fastest growing regions, especially since the establishment of the Asian Economic Community in 2015. To mitigate climate change and make notable impact, low carbon energy system implementation is a key to an environmentally responsible future development. In this regard, assistance from IRENA and its well-experienced members in the fields of energy system evaluation, policy planning, capacity building, project support, including technical assistance and project finance, will be indeed beneficial in supporting Southeast Asia's effort to strengthen renewable energy business and, in time, the economy in general in the region. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, to conclude, I believe that this is our moment to open any opportunities to deeply explore renewable energy utilization, exchange experiences and best practices. As we are working hard to develop the energy sector for a better future, this endeavor cannot be done individually. We are looking forward that this discussion will be fruitful in expanding our perspectives and formulating future partnership activities. Thank you.
I thank His Excellency the Minister of Energy and Mineral Resources of Indonesia, and for also highlighting the enormous challenge that many developing countries that are still trying to not only grow economically but also provide greater energy services to an economy. The numbers that the Minister mentioned, 90% of Indonesia's energy is still coming from fossil fuels. Just in the last few years, energy demand growing by 25%, and also per capita energy intensity growing. These are some of the challenging parameters that any energy ministry, any national economy, but also the energy transition needs to take into account, and just demonstrates that particularly in developing economies, there is almost a double challenge in trying to make that transition happen, not tomorrow, but in fact in today's reality. So thank you again, Minister, for sharing with us some very practical insights. It's now my particular pleasure to welcome the last statement from IRENA's host, the United Arab Emirates, the Minister of Climate Change and Environment, His Excellency Dr. Abdullah bin Mohammed Belahif Al Nuaimi. Please, colleagues, if you would play the tape.
Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it's a pleasure to join you today. I would like to thank His Excellency Francisco La Camera for organizing this excellent ministerial session, and IRENA for providing expertise to assist countries in revising their nationally determined contribution. This brings me to an announcement that I am proud to share with you this afternoon. The United Arab Emirates submitted its second nationally determined contribution under the Paris Agreement last month. With the support of our stakeholders, we were able to increase our ambition to reduce carbon emission to 23.5% compared to business as normal for the year 2030. This translates into absolute emission reduction of about 70 million tons. A major part of our commitment is based on renewable energy in line with the United Arab Emirates Energy Strategy 2050. Our clean power capacity is on track to reach 14 gigawatts by 2030 from only 125 megawatt 5 years ago, and 2.4 gigawatts at present. To date, we have invested more than $40 billion in clean energy projects locally. The nationally determined contribution is not a standalone achievement, but combines the efforts of all federal and local entities. We are also grateful to our leadership that views climate change as the most prominent threat to mankind. While the approval and the implementation of the nationally determined contribution is a key milestone, it's only one step in the right direction. The move falls under our national, economic, and energy diversification drive, manifested in the country's current energy transition. We are committed to doing our part to achieve the goals of the Paris Agreement and joining forces with the rest of the world to fight climate change. This year, we look forward to COP26 in Glasgow and to exchanging experiences with our fellow members in advancing climate action in the post-COVID-19 world. I thank you very much.
I thank the Minister very much for his remarks and also for reminding us that the NDCs are a vital stepping stone. They are a milestone, but they are just one along a journey of enormous transitions. And as we bring this part of the Assembly session to a close, let me just offer two brief reflections in terms of what we have heard this morning and what the significance of this moment in time also is of this 11th Assembly. I think we all sense that we are in the midst of a development emergency from the point of view that a pandemic has brought us in many parts of the world to a point where economies had to shut down, where extraordinary setbacks are occurring, including amongst the most vulnerable, be they national economies of small island developing states, be they rural economies, and be they the poor in the urban areas. We have seen the notion of inequality becoming a very stark reality in the midst of trying to manage the impact of this pandemic. And so this 11th Assembly, the notion of energy transitions and the ability to conceive of a green recovery, I think will draw a great deal of encouragement from what we have heard here this morning. And it is crucial that these lessons now become a matter of public commitment. It is very easy to drift back to the tracks we were on before the pandemic hit. Some of them very encouraging, as we have heard, but also some of them more reflective of the inertia and too slow a pace of progress that we could see. And that relates to the climate emergency. COP26 this year with the NDCs is a unique moment of either seeing that international climate agreement and the ability to work together as a community of nations coming closer to where science is telling us we need to be, and where the window of time is so rapidly closing that there are some who are already dismissing our ability to meet a 1.5-degree target. It would be, if you perhaps read in 100 years' time history books, an absurd conclusion to reach. If you look at all the possibilities we have heard, if you have seen the scaling up that is already happening, just remind you of India's example of increasing 14-fold renewable energy and so many others that we have heard. And this is my third point in terms of this moment in time. We are an extremely stressed community of nations and economies right now. But if you actually look at the prospect of what IRENA is meant to promote and support countries in, then this is the future, a future where literally thousands of years of a dependency on biomass and fossil fuels is, in a sense, coming to an end. It doesn't mean overnight, it doesn't mean that we don't use fossil fuels for a period into the future. But imagine we are literally at a point where energy may for the first time almost become too cheap to meter. It is ubiquitous in terms of its sources. It is increasingly harnessable in terms of the technologies, including hydrogen technologies and others that we have heard about this morning. And it should give us the courage to not prevaricate, but in fact to use this crisis, the development crisis in the context of the pandemic, the climate emergency, but also this extraordinary potential in which transformation and transition is no longer theory. It is not science fiction. It is not unaffordable. All of these arguments have been disproven, and IRENA is a living statement of that realization and the commitment of nations to work together. in that spirit, I'm very grateful to have had the opportunity to moderate this session this morning. And on behalf of the UN family of UNDP, I thank you, Francesco, for the leadership that you have brought to this agency, but also to this idea. And it's a great pleasure to work with you, as you have also pointed out in your introductory remarks. I hand back to the Vice President of the 11th IRENA Assembly, Deputy Minister Simako, and thank you very much for an extremely well-organized session, flawless in logistics and visuals. And thank you to all the speakers for having been so good in adhering to the time allotted to them. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Steiner. I will now like to open the floor for the interventions. There are many countries, but we have a full list of requests. Kindly be reminded that the interventions are limited to 3 minutes. Now, I give the floor to His Excellency Raymond Geyer, Minister of Energy and Water, Lebanon. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. It's a pleasure for me joining fellow colleagues in this discussion on how to foster an energy transition, or more explicitly, a clean, green, and sustainable energy transition. It's no doubt that the world is witnessing a critical moment in its history, a moment that is making all of us rethink our perspectives to doing business. Despite the fact that COVID-19 pandemic and the economic pressure that is linked to the pandemic itself have shuffled up the priorities of countries and businesses, the green energy transition has kept its position as a top priority for energy leaders in Lebanon and worldwide. Lebanon, of course, is no exception, and I strongly affirm that our country is fully committed to contributing positively to the global energy transition. Our work at the Ministry of Energy and Water here in Lebanon stems from a strategic concern to depend less on fossil fuels, to have less negative impacts on our environment, and to count on reliable, cheap, digitized energy, renewable energy sources that can reach every single house in the country. I'm fully confident that economic development and prosperity go hand in hand with the implementation of the green energy transition. As a member of IRENA, Lebanon has shown full support to the work that IRENA is doing, and our country has benefited a lot from the experiences gained through IRENA. Less than a year ago, IRENA supported Lebanon in developing the country's renewable energy outlook for the year 2030, based on the agency's renewable readiness assessment and renewable energy mapping, and has set a target of 30% renewable energy of the total electricity demand by 2030. Allow me here to reiterate the commitment of the Ministry of Energy and Water to push forward towards achieving this objective. The core of our 5-year National Action Plan are in full harmony with the work that we have done with IRENA. Yet it's important to note that for Lebanon to meet its national objectives, the support of the international community is definitely needed. Private sector companies, international investors, and the international community is definitely needed. And all our friends need to join efforts with us to move forward with the implementation of Lebanon's action plan, leading to a win-win situation for all. IRENA has succeeded in creating a global platform for discussing energy issues, and more importantly, to implement energy program. We hope IRENA will keep its leading role in aligning efforts, not only at the energy level, but also at the bigger climate change scene. By engaging with member countries on energy and climate change issues, IRENA would surely have an added value to the development and implementation of NDCs and long-term strategies. Allow me to conclude by thanking IRENA's General Director, Mr. Francesco La Camera, and all members of the IRENA Secretariat who have shown the real spirit of a fighter during those tough times. Through the momentum that IRENA has created, our national efforts have gained new dimension in the race towards the energy transition. As our big next focus is on the upcoming COP26 meeting of the UNFCCC and beyond, we call upon IRENA to organize and engage in key strategic events with partners, with the hope to enhance climate actions for a better tomorrow. Thank you all.
Thank you, Excellency, Mr. Raymond, and from Lebanon. Now the floor is for His Excellency Dr. Boyana Onu, Minister of Science and Technology, Nigeria. Please, the floor is yours. Excellency, we cannot hear you. Please, to the mic. We cannot hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Okay, fine. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. In Nigeria, the institutional framework is such that we have the Ministry of Finance, Budget, and National Planning responsible for the overall national development planning, with inputs from various subsectors of the national economy, while the responsibility for the strategic planning of the energy subsector lies with the Energy Commission of Nigeria in collaboration with all relevant stakeholders. Nigeria is conscious of the socio-economic importance of energy transition in the development of the world. Consequently, the government of President Muhammadu Buhari is working hard to ensure that Nigeria moves towards achieving its vision of 30% renewables in its grid electricity generation capacity of 30 gigawatts by 2030. To this effect, a bilateral agreement between Nigeria and Germany for a three-phase end-to-end grid power improvement to 25 gigawatts by 2025 has since commenced. This will be in addition to targeted 13 gigawatts of grid solar PV and energy intensity improvement of 30% between 2015 and 2030. Reforms in our petroleum industry is also ongoing to meet the challenges and exploit the opportunities presented by energy transition into our economy. In our response to the COVID-19 pandemic's adverse effects on our economy, a national economic sustainability plan has been put in place with a renewable energy component to provide solar home systems for 5 million homes with attendant job creation to enterprising youths. Mr. Vice President, Nigeria being one of the pioneer members of ARENA has always met our annual assessed contributions to the agency since inception. We kept the pace even at this moment of economic recession imposed by COVID-19. We will continue to collaborate with ARENA towards realizing the goal of a decarbonized global energy system to meet the climate change mitigation objectives. We are convinced that collaboration and partnership is the way out. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Excellency Mr. Onu from Nigeria. Now the floor is for Mr. Mikhail Malashenko, Deputy Chairman of State Standardization Committee, Director of the Department for the
Can you hear
Efficiency
me?
of Belarus.
Can you hear me? It's okay. Maybe they're doing other things.
Огромное спасибо, уважаемые дамы и господа, за предоставленную возможность выступить
Thank you
на...
very much for the opportunity to speak at this session. I'm going to be brief, and obviously I'm not going to get out of the 3 minutes allocated to me. Belarus has done a lot to ensure achievement of SDG 7 to provide affordable, modern, sophisticated source of energy for everybody. And the work that we've done and our efforts in that direction, aiming at improving and adjusting our legislation, is a part of the program that is being adopted every 5 years. And we based our work on close cooperation with CIS countries, with the countries of the European Union, and this work was aimed at improving energy efficiency, increasing stable use of renewables. And the Stable Development Council approves a plan of actions aimed at achieving and implementation of SDG 2030. And next to social and economic issues, one of the major points of this plan for 2021 is the development of a national state standard for the energy efficiency. And we did this work in coordination and in consultations with IRENA. And this will help us to assess the readiness of Belarus to carry out the energy transition to renewables. I would like to thank Mr. De La Camera for accepting our proposal to organize an international seminar for Belarus on integration of low temperature renewables, the heating and cooling systems. On top, while working on the renewables for producing electric power, the topic of this seminar will boost the the attention that we pay to the energy transition. And under the COVID-19 conditions last year in Belarus, we have developed and we are planning to implement the 6th state program on energy efficiency. And for the next 5 years, we are going to implement the tasks on increasing energy efficiency. Annually in our country, we are achieving about 1 million ton savings of fossil fuel through the use of renewables, which is our input into mitigation of climate change. And it's done under the auspices of the Ministry of the Mineral Resources and Environment. And a part of our NDC and also our commitments under the Paris agreements, we are moving towards a carbon neutral future in which our children and also we ourselves will live. The Republic of Belarus understands that renewables shouldn't be paid for, unlike we do it when we are buying gas. Therefore, we use certain advantages in the use of renewables for our own needs, both industry and households, which increases the living standards in the countries and the competitiveness of our economy. I would also like to thank Irina for their constructive cooperation with Belarus, and I would like to wish all participants of the 11th Assembly health in 2021 in order to achieve all our goals. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Marashenko. The floor is for Alfonso Blanco Bonilla, Executive Secretary, Latin American Energy Organization. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure for me to be here. Director General of IRENA, Dr. Francesco Lacamera, Ministers of IRENA, member countries, ambassadors and authorities of IRENA member countries, authorities of international agencies, international organizations, and company partners of IRENA. Have a good afternoon, everyone. First of all, I want to thank IRENA for this invitation. A special thanks to our friend, Director General Francesco Lacamera, for the kind invitation to this 21st General Assembly of IRENA. I want to express and reinforce our will and commitment from the Latin American Energy Organization to support the necessary actions and collaborative work between IRENA and OLADE to promote energy transitions in Latin America and the Caribbean in collaboration with the rest of the world. The year 2020 presented an unprecedented situation. The world is going through a pandemic that leaves a deep scar in the humanity, with more of 2 million people died and an economic devastation scenario. The entire world will have a GDP drop of 4.2%, and Latin America and the Caribbean will have an estimated drop of 7.5%. This implies a widening of social gaps in developing economies and widening poverty and affecting other development indicators, human development indicators. The loss of employment during the pandemic is a major problem for Latin America and the Caribbean, and developing economies will have the most complex recovery scenario for the near future, due to the scarcity of fiscal resources for economic reactivation and because financial resources are necessary used to face the pandemic and the health crisis. So there is a warning sign for the evolution and progress of energy transition in emerging economies. We will have a lack of financial resources for the application of anti-cyclical policies in order to reactivate our economies, and additionally, renewable energy projects in the pipeline could be affected or delayed. In this sense, to make the energy sector a potential agent in the reactivation of our economies and fundamentally considering a sustainable recovery with focus on renewable energies, I am convinced that it's highly necessary to strengthen planning capacities in the energy sector, to support the design of appropriate policies for the short term, mid-term, and long term, and act directly on this potential negative impact that the pandemic could have on the evolution of energy transitions around the world. IRENA is working in our region using planning tools for the high participation of intermittent energy sources. This type of studies should also demonstrate the cost effectiveness of the renewable energies for the energy mix and should define the optimal alternatives for the expansion of the electrical systems in our region. It is also necessary to deepen the prospective models that incorporate the evolution of the energy demand in the scenarios of high electrification. We also consider to include project investment not only in generation infrastructure, but also in the upgrade of the electrical grids required for a greater participation of the electricity in the future energy mix. We have to focus and demonstrate the political decision maker that renewable energies have a high capacity to generate highly skilled jobs and generate more added value to our local economies. In this sense, we have to give clear signals about how renewable energies can be integrated into a socio-economic development model that incorporates the concept of social justice in the implementation of the energy transitions. There are many challenges we have to identify and allocate resources with a focus on the decarbonization of our economies in a scenario of greater electrification, but assuming that we will have a contained energy demand due to the negative impact of the economic crisis that could limit the incorporation of large-scale capacity in the near future in emerging economies. So we have to look beyond the larger-scale power generation. We also have to consider digitalization, increased electrification of demand, and new electrical uses, e-mobility, energy storage, green hydrogen, the expansion of distributed generation, and modernization of the electrical grids. Those are clear strategies to concentrate and attract investment that could have a direct impact, creating more than and better jobs for our people. Even this unfavorable future scenario in the meeting of ministers of OLADE, the countries of the Latin American and the Caribbean region have unanimously decided to give their support to promote the necessary actions to incorporate a regional goal in terms of renewable energy, an ambitious initiative supported by the Inter-American Development Bank, OLADE, and other agencies like IRENA, and originally proposed by Colombia, Chile, and Costa Rica governments. Once again, I appreciate the opportunity that IRENA gives me to share this annual meeting. I congratulate the important work that has been done, and I give my appreciation to our friend Francesco for La Camera for the outstanding work leading the International Renewable Energy Agency. Have a nice day. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Alfonso. You already used double time. So I would like to call the others to use the official time that have in the limited one, which is 3 minutes. Please respect it. Now the floor is for the Dr. Nuki Agaya-Utama, Executive Director, Asian Center of Energy. Please, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you very much, Vice President. Thank you very much for inviting me, Francesco La Camera, Director General. The ASEAN Center for Energy is representative in the energy sector coming from Southeast Asia, that we do have a regional energy target and plan of ASEAN, which is designed to be in line with the global ambition framed by 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and the Paris Agreement on Climate Change. The NDC is valued highly in ASEAN economic community to achieve inclusive and dynamic regional economic integration towards 2025. Hence, regional energy cooperation is continuously advanced through the framework of ASEAN Plan of Action for Energy Cooperation, or APAC. These blueprints enter into force that continues the same theme that puts sustainability as an equally important component as energy security, accessibility, and affordability. The blueprint also built on the aspiration of the ASEAN member states to accelerate energy transition, a key strategy to strengthen regional energy resilience, which is in line with the global agenda of sustainable development goals, mainly SDG 7 and Paris Agreement. Such goal innovation and cooperation are stressed. Innovation towards low emission pathway are adopted in each blueprint's program areas, including renewable energy, energy efficiency, clean coal technology, carbon capture storage, as well as energy on the power generation and smart grid. The specific outcome-based strategies on energy climate nexus has been endorsed, as well as by the ASEAN Minister of Energy meeting last year, solidifying the regional stance on energy climate nexus. The ASEAN promotes energy efficiency strategies as well in all sectors, including transportation, industrial, buildings, to achieve the regional target. We have increased the regional energy intensity target to 32% in 2025 based on the 2005 level. The key program includes the ASEAN Energy Management Certification Scheme, efficiency partnership with member states, as well as the dialogue partners throughout the region. The blueprint also commits to push the regional renewable energy target to 23% in 2025 on the total primary energy supply. And under the renewable energy program area, the region placed special emphasis as well as on increasing the energy accessibility and rural electrification through renewable energy. A collaboration including RE Outlook with IRENA, biofuel and bioenergy study with the SAM Institute in ASEAN, PV with CRE and various studies by German institution as well as the country in Europe. The trend of decreasing cost of renewable energy as well as resiliency of renewable energy amid pandemics can be key highlights of RE promotion in support of climate actions. Thank you very much for the opportunities. Back to you, Vice President.
Thank you for your efficient speech. You respected the time. I call the others to do the same. So the floor now is for His Excellency, Mr. Frans Michael Skjold Melvin, Ambassador of Denmark in United Emirates and permanent representative of IRENA. Thank you. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vice President, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. We are happy to be here today. Let me share with you that Denmark stands by its unique ambition to reduce greenhouse gases with 70% by 2030, so only in 9 years from now. And of course, renewable energy will play a critical role in achieving this. It's our national experience that long-term plans are critical when transforming the energy sector. We succeed by planning for success. And we believe this is true for everyone who wants to go through this kind of transformation. In 2020, Denmark therefore took a number of decisions that will take us 1/3 of the way towards our uniquely ambitious goal. There's a package of things that we will be doing, extending the use of electric cars. We've decided a green tax reform. We've decided to establish artificial energy islands with offshore wind farms, potentially also driving P2X, more waste sorting. We'll increase the renewable fuel mix into our carbon fuel mix, and very importantly, of course, through increased electrification. With this package, we're off to a good start to fulfill our ambitions. As I said, 1/3 of the way. We can certainly do a lot of ourselves as government, but we can do much more with our partners. And that's why the government is also working together very closely with all Danish business sectors through joint working groups to try to define the best way forward and develop better and more cost-effective energy policies and solutions. This is to help our companies plan investments and tap into the opportunities our public energy policies bring to the energy market. Denmark actually has the largest energy technology exports in the world compared to the size of our economy. This is, of course, a strength, but still we are mobilizing much more than just our energy sector, because the energy transition is already having, we believe, a transformative impact on our society and the global community. So the Danish government is working hard to build a strong, stable national consensus behind our policies so that our climate partnerships span all key business sectors, including agriculture, fishing, finance, etc. Even service sectors are thus included. Meanwhile, we are of course also working in close partnership with our neighbors, like witnessed through recent agreements with Germany and the Netherlands, just to mention a couple, through the European Union, which we also have a close partnership and collaborative effort with, and of course with our international partners through IRENA and other multilateral organizations and platforms. And here I'd like to say that we see IRENA playing a key role as a global platform for the penetration of renewable energy, allowing everyone to learn and share insights and highlighting good practices that are much needed. There's not one solution for everyone, especially when it comes to renewable energy. We will know that our national aptitude to various techniques and technologies is different, our needs are different, etc. But it does allow us to come together and have these good practices and better insights. ARENA is also facilitating financing, something that we're very happy about, helping develop sound policies and much more. And this is why we value the fact that last year we were able to enter into a new strategic agreement with ARENA, which was signed last fall, and which makes us confident that we can work closely together with all the partners, with ARENA at the core in spreading the opportunities for renewable energy. Task in front of us is huge, but the rewards are even greater, and together we can. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Melvin. Now the floor is for Mr. Joao Galamba, Deputy Minister of Energy of Portugal. Please, the floor is yours, Excellency.
Thank you, distinguished Mr. Achim Steiner. Thank you for having the opportunity to contribute to this roundtable. Energy transition demands timely actions, and planning determines the success in reaching the goals that were established. In 2016, Portugal set the goal of carbon neutrality by 2050, and the roadmap was designed with a very concrete set of measures and policies to be implemented. In addition, responding to EU commitments, it was designed a national energy and climate plan for a 10-year period, identifying in an integrated manner how Portugal could contribute to EU targets in 2030, regarding namely greenhouse gas emission reduction, decrease of renewables in energy production, energy efficiency, and improving interconnections. It is noted that the goals established nationally are ambitious but believed to be a realistic vision to be achieved by 2030. Designing this integrated plan was a very comprehensive and relevant process, enabling at the national level to assess and monitor our efforts in a very comprehensive and inclusive way. More recently, Portugal adopted also the National Hydrogen Strategy that foresees the implementation of over 2 gigawatts capacity of renewable hydrogen electrolyzers installed by 2030. This represents around 5% of the EU 2030 goal of 40 gigawatts, allowing the production of 300,000 tons of hydrogen from renewable energy. Last December, European Union heads of state and government showed support to a significant increase of the EU's emission reduction target, from 40 to at least 55%. That will be the basis of the EU's updated national determined contribution to the UNFCCC. Simultaneously, a comprehensive legislative revision is also expected in order to guarantee that all EU legislation is fit for 55, which can imply an increase in renewables and energy efficiency. Portugal is ready to go further on its 2030 target and to contribute to European Union's strong signal on what concerns energy transition. The upcoming COP26 will be an extraordinary opportunity to strengthen our ambition and to reinforce the role that reducing energy-related emissions can have in our global climate efforts. Energy transition must be at the top of our recovery, and collaborative work and partnerships are key to this success. Portugal is deeply committed to this agenda. We are mobilizing our entire national resources and our international partnerships because we believe if a few months ago it was time to speed up, now with the COVID and the tying up of climate action and the crisis recovery, it has become even more relevant, both nationally and internationally. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Portugal. So now the floor is for Thorsten Herden, Director General, Federal Ministry for Economic Affairs and Energy, BMWI of Germany. Please, the floor is yours.
Yeah, Mr. Vice President, thank you very much. And also, Achim, thanks a lot for framing all that. We, as was just mentioned by my Portuguese colleague during our presidency of the EU, have raised the target to 55% for reduction of CO2 by 2030. And this is a big success, I have to say, because we all know that we are running for climate neutrality by 2050. And this is a planning period. And in Germany, we last year have carved not in stone, but in law, the climate neutrality by 2050. So we now have 2 laws which do say that we have to be climate neutral by 2050. So for us, it is very clear that if we set ourselves such targets, it is already a plan. And then there is no question that, of course, we have to continue the energy planning in order to achieve that final plan, meaning carbon neutrality by 2050. And I think we all have to be very clear and very sure that without planning the production of renewable energy, without planning the infrastructure to bring the renewable energy to the consumers, and without planning the consumption itself, meaning the innovation to consume the renewable energies, we will have no chance to arrive at that point of climate neutrality. So for us, the national energy planning is a must, is an absolute must, and I'm very happy that Irina has taken up that point, and within the Clean Energy Ministerial is leading the group of the long-term energy scenarios where together with our Danish friends, we support as much as we can. But we also have to plan, and I think that is very important too, the costs and the prices. Cost meaning what does it cost for society, what does it bring for society in order to go that route, and of course prices, and then I see the CO2 price. For us, the very important pillar in each and every energy planning and each and every climate planning is to adopt the CO2 price, which really shows what the reality looks like. Without that planning, we will never ever get acceptance. We will never ever get acceptance from the public, and we will never ever could bring the industry to those chances industry really has. I will mention the very last point to give an input into Irina's future work. We are talking very much on sector coupling. And I'm looking to what Achim Steiner said, that the nations are working together. So let's invent the new wording, perhaps nations coupling, because we need to couple the nations. We need to identify which nations do have an excess of renewable energy and which nations do need renewable energy. So we as Germany belong to the second, to the nations which do need renewable energy. So by sector coupling the sectors, we now need to go the next step into nations coupling. And I think Irina is very, very well on its way in order to bring all that nations together. Almost every nation is within Irina, so nations coupling will be the next step. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Herden. Now the floor is for Director Marit Brommer, Executive Director, International Geothermal Association. Please, Mr. Brommer, the floor is yours. Mrs. Brommer, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Excellencies, Mr. Vice President, Director General. Thank you very much for hosting today's very interesting session. I've already learned a lot. I represent on behalf of the IGA, the geothermal sector and the geothermal industry, as we are an industry association. And we have been the hidden champion, as we call it, in the energy transition, but we have been able to be mapped in the national roadmaps to the net zero future. And I applaud and I commend my fellow countries and the senior leadership that are not only convened here today, but also by IRENA and specifically the Global Geothermal Alliance, with whom we are really trying with all the departments of energies and the secretaries of state to convene the importance around geothermal for 2 important markets. That is, first and foremost, for electricity. It's the power, baseload power, with whom we work together, specifically in the Asia Pacific with New Zealand as one of the champion countries, but also Indonesia, who have really taken a strong push towards implementing geothermal in their national plans. Philippines, a very strong member of ours as well. And moving to Europe from Asia Pacific, I thank Germany and the Netherlands, Denmark, for their consistent push with geothermal for heating and cooling, because that's another important pillar where we see an enormous need and benefit of geothermal to decarbonize that heating and cooling sector. I also see commendable efforts from my East African region and partners, specifically Kenya, Djibouti, Ethiopia. You have mapped geothermal very wisely and very consecutively over the past decade in your national plans. And I think it's worthwhile mentioning that even under the corona pandemic, Ethiopia managed to get the first wells drilled. Which brings me to the other side of the ocean, to the United States and the Department of Energy, with whom we've worked very heavily over the past year to make oil and gas see the benefits of looking with an eye on the ground and an effort to decarbonize both the power sector and the heating cooling sector for the US. And that is commendable because we see that there are quite some efforts to redeploy a standstill workforce that used to drill for oil and is now drilling for clean heat. We also see strong partnerships, and again, mapped into the national plans and the technical road mapping for Canada, Central America, and a special thank you for the Caribbean nations, because the small island development states, not only do they forefront the climate change battering of the hurricanes, but also they're seated on some fantastic hotspots, literally speaking, for geothermal. And they have embraced and are really trying to build it into their capacity and curves for learning in their national plans. As IGA and as our sector, we see three fundamental things that we're going to work towards in the coming 3 to 5 years in order to reach not only the national DCs, but also the technical roadmaps in order to make geothermal more widespread and more mainstream. And that is centered towards, first and foremost, it's centered around scalability. We need to be scaled up. We are seen as a niche, we're very small, but we will be scaled up across countries, across continents, with the technologies at hand and the political framework with whom I again want to work with the GGA on, and the IRENA in general, for this coalition of action around the political frameworks and the regulations that are needed for geothermal. Second, it is about affordability. At the moment, the levelized cost of energy for geothermal is not bad, but we can do better. Especially on the technology side, we can do better when it comes down to driving down costs and efficiency of our power plants. And third, very close to all of our hearts, sustainability. We've invested quite heavily for some sustainability tools in order to prove, demonstrate, and go beyond our net zero commitment. And hence we will have a toolbox available as of 21, where we will go around our power plants and our heating plants, and we will look for sustainable measures that can either say that we are at target or where we can do better in order to help the countries and local communities to drive the net zero goals. We can't do it without collaboration. I thank IRENA once more for convening this very interesting panel, but also in the years to come, where we come together and build the coalition of willing to make and reach the Paris Agreement. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Bromer, for the strong speech coming from the earth. Then let's move to the next one, which is Maria Michele, Bioenergy Partnership. Please, the floor is yours. We are not hearing you. Okay, Maria, since that you are not solving a technical problem, please let's go ahead with Mr. Ben Beckwell, Chief Executive Officer, Global Wind Energy Council. Please, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, Your Excellencies, Ministers, and thank you, IRENA, for this invitation to take part in this important session. The global wind industry has been remarkably resilient through the COVID pandemic, and this year we will install a record amount of something like 78 gigawatts, creating tens of thousands of jobs and mobilizing billions in investment around the world. I think for us, what's important, listening to people's contributions around planning and around the NDCs, is that for us, the question is not an aspect of lack of investment appetite. We see a very, very strong private sector appetite for wind and increasing ramp up of wind power around the world to the point where we're at 78 gigawatts this year. But we're still quite a long way from where IRENA says we should be, which is something like 2,000 gigawatts of onshore and offshore wind by 2030, and 6,000 gigawatts of onshore and offshore wind by 2050. So that means we need to be installing something like 180 gigawatts of wind power every year between now and 2050, so as not to fall behind. And at the moment, we are at something like less than half of that. So we need to speed things up. And we know that ramping up installed capacity to above these 2,000 gigawatts by 2030 would allow us to create additional annual investment of something like 207 billion per year, or over $2 trillion, and also triple direct and indirect jobs to around 4 million globally by 2030 if we have deployment at the necessary rate. Now, the major challenges we face, as I said, are not a lack of investment. It's a lack of clarity over national targets for renewables, particularly for 2030 and then beyond for 2050. It's planning and permitting systems which are not fit for purpose. So literally we have hundreds of gigawatts held up in the planning system, which are literally shovel ready and ready to create immediate investment, but they're not reaching construction across the world. So we really need to work together with governments and with IRENA to create a framework for speeding things up. And then finally, market systems which were not built to facilitate the energy transition and which continue to incentivize incumbent fossil power instead of renewable capacity. So what we really need to do is take a true climate emergency approach, where we create a streamlined planning and permitting system, investable market design, in order to ensure that these trillions of dollars which companies are prepared to invest can be deployed and at speed. And if we do that, we will see huge, steady and sustained gains in carbon emission reductions, and also very significant benefits for countries, economies and communities. And we're working very closely with countries and with IRENA and with other organizations to make this happen. In particular, I'd mention the climate investment platform that IRENA is unveiling around the world, and also the collaborative framework. So we're very excited and committed to continuing this work. And we think that if we work together, we can really accelerate things and ramp things up. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Mr. Beckwell. Let's come back to Ms. Marie Moreze to give the floor again if she has fixed the problems.
Thank you very much. And sorry. And sorry for the these technical problems. I hope this is getting better. So, distinguished delegates, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, well, allow me to thank the IRENA Director General Francesco La Camera for inviting me to contribute to this extremely important discussion during the Ministerial Plenary session. Well, if we think about the energy transition, we should not forget the role of bioenergy in driving this. Energy, including bioenergy, agriculture, and climate change are strongly linked. Energy is required at each step of the food value chain to produce food, but current agricultural food systems rely heavily on fossil fuels to operate, with the direct consequence of contributing to increased GHG emissions. Change is possible through improving access to energy, higher efficiency, and increased use of renewable energy in agriculture, including sustainable bioenergy from agri-food systems. These can have the dual benefit of providing sustainable energy input to agriculture, thereby increasing productivity while limiting emissions. On the other side, bioenergy is a core component of the energy transition, especially in the short to medium term. in terms of potential to decarbonizing additional major sectors such as transport, that's the case of shipping, heavy freight, aviation, and industry. The NDCs are a comprehensive planning exercise that cover all productive sectors of a country's economy. Bioenergy can represent an important method for many sectors to reduce their carbon emissions through the concurrent use of the renewable energy produced and through the circular bioeconomy principles of reutilization of wastes and residues. This is especially pertinent in the agricultural sector, but not only. Bioenergy as part of the bioeconomy can help to drive this energy transition. The provision of byproducts and services in productive sectors can make the transition more economically viable, as well as more environmentally and socially sustainable. The energy transition is therefore dependent on the transition from a linear economy to a circular bioeconomy. And the role of bioenergy will also be contingent on this, with the need to develop innovative practices that valorize all system components. If I think about the cooperation between the Global Bioenergy Partnership that I represent as the Executive Secretary and IRENA, I could state that IRENA is a partner of GBEP. FAO, the Food and Agriculture Organization, is also a partner of GBEP and also hosts the Secretariat in the FAO headquarters in Rome. So we've been working in cooperation towards our common goals so far, and I'm confident we could take advantage of the recently signed Memorandum of Understanding between IRENA and FAO to facilitate a strengthened cooperation with GBEP with regard to accelerating the deployment of bioenergy to improve sustainability while also reducing negative effects of climate change. GBEP and IRENA could further strengthen cooperation with a view to support the needed energy transition. In particular, GBEP, through its proven expertise in the assessment of bioenergy sustainability and related policy guidance, could add strategic value to the activities of IRENA in this sector. This is particularly important if we think about the broader umbrella of the energy transition in the context of the post-pandemic recovery, climate resilience, and net zero strategies. Thank you so much, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Morese. Then we have to move now that to have some statements for the following countries like Serbia, Grenada, China, Cyprus, Philippines, Argentina, Azerbaijan, Japan, Republic of Korea, Kyrgyzstan, Palau, Dominican Republic, and Greece. Please, let's start with Serbia.
Camera, ladies and gentlemen, it's my honor and pleasure to greet everyone gathering here on behalf of the new government of the Republic of Serbia and on my own behalf. I would like to take this opportunity to express the readiness of the new government to achieve Serbia's strategic goals through decarbonization, greater use of renewable energy sources, and energy efficiency. In 2020, the total gross production of electricity from renewable energy sources, including big hydropower plants in Serbia, amounted to 27%. But if we exclude big hydropower plants, then the production from renewable energy sources was only 4.3%. Unfortunately, by 2020, Serbia did not reach the targets in the field of renewable energy sources. That is why the new government initiated a regulatory reform through amendments to the law on energy, law on efficient use of energy, then the drafting of a new specific law on renewable energy sources, and the drafting of the law on climate change and national plan for climate and energy. When it comes to energy transition, the only sustainable way for our country is to increase production from renewable energy sources and medium hydropower plants and raise energy efficiency as well. Pollution caused by transportation can be resolved by increasing the number of electric vehicles. All the current researchers have confirmed that one of the largest lithium deposits in Europe is located in Serbia. Through the project of exploitation of boron and lithium ore, Serbia could become the main producer, maybe even at a global level, of batteries for electric cars. As a European country, we are determined to contribute to the carbon neutrality by 2050 and define our energy and climate targets by 2030. The strategic direction of energy capacity development is based on clean technologies. This is the reason why we will invest more than 1.3 billion euros by 2030 into new systems to remove harmful substances from the thermal power plants. Faster transition to green energy requires greater cooperation between countries, accompanied by the promotion of research and development of new technologies. On behalf of the Republic of Serbia, I'd like to invite all potential investors interested in investing in renewable energy sources to come to Serbia, because by improving the existing and adopting a new and modern legal framework, we will create a more favorable business environment for energy investment. I wish you all good health and clean air that will be made possible both through the development of renewable energy sources and through the efficient fight against the COVID-19 pandemic. Thank you very much.
Mr. President, colleague council members, Director General and staff of IRENA, delegates all. I commence by joining with those before me in complimenting the Director General and his team for the excellent job they have been doing at IRENA during this difficult period. In December 2020, Grenada joined with other small island developing states and the rest of the world in renewing its commitment to energy security and emission reduction and transition to renewable and clean energy in its 2020 nationally determined contributions, second NDC, to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. Our renewed commitment is to reduce greenhouse gases emissions by 40% of the 2010 emissions levels by 2030 through interventions in the following sectors: energy, including transport, waste, forestry, industrial processes, product use, and hydrofluorocarbons. We'll also leverage mitigation co-benefits of adaptation actions. In the area of electricity energy generation, the focus will be transitioning to renewables through investments in solar, wind, and geothermal, with a target of 50% by 2030, up from only 1.5% at present. Grenada is committed to ensuring that its energy policy is followed through oversight and monitoring, strengthening the newly created enabling legal environment for renewable energy and energy efficiency implementation, following the removal of the barriers imposed by powerful fossil fuel private sector interest. To fully implement the mitigation measures contained in this NDC, Grenada will require grants and other concessional financing, support for capacity building and institutional strengthening, and access to appropriate technologies. Specific support sought from IRENA will include strengthening of regulations, policy and strategy formulation, technical institutional assistance, and grants and concessional financing for targeted investments. We commit to working with all our development partners and the private sector towards meeting our commitment to the objectives of the Paris Agreement. Special thanks to IRENA for facilitating the grant assistance from the UAE CREF for a solar battery PV hybrid system, which will be implemented in 2021, making the sister island of Karakou 50% renewable. I thank you.
Distinguished Director General Francesco La Camera, dear colleagues, good afternoon. It is my pleasure to exchange views with you on national energy planning and implementation for fostering energy transition. Taking this opportunity, I would like to share the measures the Chinese government has taken and the progress in facilitating the formulation and implementation of energy plans and accelerating energy transition. The Chinese government has always attached importance to the role of strategic planning in guiding energy transition. During the past 5 years, China issued and implemented the Energy Supply and Consumption Reform Strategy 2016 to 2030, and 15 5-year plans for specific sectors, 6 of which were related to renewable energy. Moreover, the main targets and indicators set out in the 13th Five-Year Plan for Energy Development have been effectively implemented with key agenda advanced, key projects proceeded in an orderly manner, and reform further deepened. Thanks to those efforts, remarkable achievements have been made in the development of clean and low-carbon energy. Over the last 5 years, more than 60% of China's incremental energy demand was provided by clean energy. While the proportion of coal in primary energy consumption dropped to a record low of about 57%, the share of non-fossil fuels rose to around 15.8%, higher than our target and achieved ahead of schedule. Over the last 5 years, renewables have taken up over 50% of the newly installed generation capacity, increasing China's total renewable capacity to over 40% of its power mix. The development and construction of nuclear power projects have progressed steadily, with numbers of units both in operation and under construction among the top in the world. The energy sector has been more ecological and environmentally friendly. China's green energy development has played an important role in the reduction of its carbon intensity. In 2019, it was 48.1% lower than that in 2005. China honored its commitment in the Paris Agreement ahead of schedule and offered strong support for its ecological protection. In the general debate of the 75th UN General Assembly last September, President Xi Jinping announced that China would scale up its NDC and strive to peak its carbon dioxide emission by 2030 and achieve carbon neutrality by 2060. At the Climate Ambition Summit last December, President Xi Jinping further proposed that by 2030, China would cut its carbon dioxide emissions per unit of GDP by over 65% from the 2005 level, increase the share of non-fossil fuels in its primary energy consumption to around 25%, and bring the total installed capacity of wind and solar power to over 1,200 gigawatts. As for next steps, adhering to the principle of ecological priority and green development, we will strive to make non-fossil fuels the main sources in incremental energy consumption. We will continue to encourage wind and solar power generation, build comprehensive renewable energy bases integrating hydro, wind, and solar energy, accelerate the development of biomass and geothermal energy, and make the exploration and utilization of fossil energy cleaner and more efficient so as to contribute to the sustainable energy development in the world. By issuing annual guidance on energy development in China, we will ensure the gradual implementation of the above-mentioned goals year by year. We will adopt a dynamic evaluation mechanism and carry out midterm evaluation and final evaluation on the implementation of the plans and modify or revise them accordingly. China is willing to strengthen dialogue and exchanges with IRENA and its member countries in the formulation and implementation of national energy plans, actively share our experience, and contribute to the global energy transition. Thank you very much.
Mr. President, ministers, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure to take the floor to address this assembly and this ministerial roundtable. At the outset, I would like to thank the United Arab Emirates for the continued hosting of this assembly. Seychelles always looks forward to the meetings of the International Renewable Energy Agency Assembly, as it is an excellent opportunity for decision makers to come together to discuss and share views on accelerating the uptake of renewable energy and advancing the global energy transformation. Mr. President, I am convinced that this ministerial roundtable will offer a platform for governments and development partners to reflect on effective means to accelerate energy transformation and ensure energy security in small island developing states like Seychelles, whilst aligning the pandemic response with the sustainable development and climate objectives. Special emphasis has to be given to renewable energy solutions in sectors that have been severely affected by the pandemic, especially tourism. Mr. President, Seychelles was on track to meet its 5% renewable energy target for 2020, but due to COVID, we had major delays in developing and commissioning 3 big projects. These are a 5 megawatt PV farm, a 5 megawatt floating PV plant, and also the commissioning of a centralized battery storage system to allow for further renewable energy integration. The pandemic, however, provides us an opportunity to take a step back and assess the progress we have made under the Climate Action Enhancement Package of the NDC Partnership Program. Seychelles has received support to review its NDC, energy policy, and energy legislation to enhance the quality, increase the ambition, and implement our nationally determined contribution. Faced with the hard lessons of the COVID pandemic, Seychelles is renewing its emphasis on small-scale and medium-scale renewable energy systems, as well as developing a framework for energy efficiency to address minimum energy performance, energy efficiency in buildings, energy market, and promotional schemes and financial incentives. Seychelles is also greening its outlying islands to run mostly on solar battery hybrid systems, and its program to install PV systems in all schools recently received an international award. Mr. President, with COVID, we see the continued need to access appropriate financing that will facilitate energy transformation to meet our international commitments. Increased ambitions of our NDC cannot be realized if we do not address challenges such as varied, fragmented financing and stringent procedures that do not consider local conditions and expectations. Small island developing states really need access to appropriate financing that will facilitate energy transformation and support the implementation of the Paris Agreement commitments and the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals. To conclude, Seychelles recognizes the importance that IRENA places on renewable energy as a catalyst for development, and believe IRENA is the ideal framework through which to facilitate such transformation to a low-carbon future. We would like to take this opportunity to connect and discuss further, as well as explore further opportunities for collaboration, not only for the country, but also for the region. We believe that we can accelerate our transformation through partnership with the support of IRENA. I thank you for your attention.
Dear ministers, distinguished delegates from governments and international organizations, on behalf of the Argentine Republic, it is a privilege for me to participate in this plenary meeting on national energy planning and implementation for fostering energy transition. We thank IRENA for inviting us to take part in such an important event. The pandemic forced us to stress the importance of human health and its interrelation with the well-being of our planet, the economy, and the sustainable development alike. Climate change is a reality that is affecting humanity as a whole, which requires immediate, joint, and coordinated actions from world leaders. The post-COVID-19 recovery actually represents an opportunity to finally face and deal with these critical issues, where international cooperation plays a central role. Building back better is the motto that should we mobilize people towards a sustainable recovery and development along a just energy transition pathway. The Argentine Republic asserts its commitment to the Paris Agreement and adopts climate change as a national policy. In this sense, and despite the economic and social impacts of the pandemic, the current administration has decided to advance the presentation of the second National Determined Contributions, NDC, last year. Furthermore, we have increased our climate ambition goal in about 26% regarding the previous report. The NDC in Argentina are prepared with the National Climate Change Cabinet, which is an interministerial forum aimed at designing public policies on climate change through the strategic articulation of different sectors. This has been a fruitful experience in energy planning and implementation in line with global climate action and the Paris Agreement goals. More specifically, Argentina energy policy for a just transition is envisaged to achieve an energy matrix by 2030 that will be characterized by 5+1 objectives, namely inclusiveness, to secure energy access to all the population, in particular to the most vulnerable groups; dynamism, to promote energy efficiency and technological diversification; stability, to secure both grid and fiscal stability through an adequate level of energy prices and investments, federalism to promote regional diversification across the country, sovereignty to ensure that energy sources are based on local resources and capabilities, and sustainability to ensure that energy generation, distribution, and use results in lower CO2 emissions over time. To fulfill this strategic vision, the Argentine Republic is endowed with vast and diverse natural resources, which will facilitate a just energy transition by focusing on energy efficiency, renewable energies, and distributed generation, with natural gas playing a key role as a transition fuel. At the same time, new infrastructure for nuclear and hydroelectric energy is currently underway, while the hydrogen economy is turning into a national strategy at the highest level. We look forward to continuing bilateral and multilateral cooperation in order to achieve more clean and sustainable energy, and we acknowledge the importance of deepening international cooperation in IRENA's platform. Thank you very much.
Distinguished President of the Assembly, Director General La Camera, distinguished colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. At the outset, I would like to greet everyone and thank you for the invitation to this important panel. The world's energy architecture is being redesigned, and the pace of energy transformation and reforms depends to a large extent on how we respond to global challenges at the national level. Implementation of UN Sustainable Development Goal 7 for ensuring universal access to sustainable energy, doubling the share of renewables and improvement in energy efficiency by 2030 needs a consolidated approach by all stakeholders. Azerbaijan exerts all efforts so that its policy, regulatory, and technological development are consistent with its highly ambitious commitments under the Paris Agreement on climate change, targeting 35% reduction in the level of greenhouse gas emissions, as well as in line with UN SDGs. The Trans-Adriatic Pipeline, TAP, the last segment of the Southern Gas Corridor, has started commercial operations at the end of 2020, delivering natural gas from the Caspian Sea to the Southern Europe. Natural gas is an important and unique resource since, compared to other hydrocarbons, it provides the same energy with lower emissions, thus perfectly complementing renewables. The TAP will support the decarbonization of Southern Europe and may open prospects for the transportation of hydrogen, another potentially zero-carbon energy source. Azerbaijan has a vast potential for renewable energy development, with excellent wind and solar resources and significant prospects for biomass, geothermal, and hydropower. This potential is roughly estimated at around 27,000 megawatts, including 23 megawatts for solar and 3,000 for wind. In order to attract private investment and facilitate large-scale projects, the President of the Republic of Azerbaijan signed a decree for setting up a favorable investment climate for renewables in May 2019. In addition, at the end of 2019, an interagency commission was established to implement pilot projects in the field of renewables. Renewable energy and energy efficiency, important pillars of energy transition, are of strategic importance for our country. By 2030, we plan to increase the share of renewables energy in the electricity generation capacity by about 1,500 megawatts to 30%. The implementation of 470 megawatt pilot projects with international energy companies are exemplary initial steps in this direction. In December 2020, the agreements on wind power plant project with a capacity of 240 megawatts were signed between the government of Azerbaijan and Aqua Power of Saudi Arabia. Implementation agreement has been signed with Masdar to develop and finance 230 megawatt solar photovoltaic project. These stations are expected to generate about 1.46 billion kilowatt hours of electricity per year, save around 320 million cubic meters of gas. These stations are expected to generate about 1.46 billion kilowatts of electricity per year, save more than 320 million cubic meters of natural gas, reduce about 680,000 tons of carbon emissions, and create hundreds of new jobs. In addition to pilot projects mentioned, measures are being taken with the participation of private sector and foreign investors for the installation of new power capacities, mainly wind and solar, of approximately 1,000 megawatts in promising areas through bilateral contracts and auctions. All those steps are aiming to establish transparent and predictable market rules for investors, domestic and foreign alike, in order to attract more private financing to the sector. Recent liberation of long-time occupied territories of Azerbaijan opened up new opportunities for sustainable development in the region. Strong political will, relevant governmental programs, and substantial potential of the liberated areas for sustainable energy will be major driving forces for the transformation of the occupied zone into a green energy zone. According to preliminary estimates, the liberated territories have more than 4,000 megawatts of solar and up to 500 megawatts of wind and large hydropower potential. The development of an energy system that meets modern standards by the utilization of rich energy potential in these areas promise good prospects for everyone. We will be open to potential partnerships in this exciting transformational venture. Azerbaijan will continue its development path consistent with long-term energy sustainability and resilient climate approaches. Needless to say, international solidarity and cooperation will be an indispensable factor to align national and regional development plans with global energy transition agenda. I'd like to thank IRANA for its initiatives to this end and wish the panel and the Assembly fruitful discussions. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Director General Mr. La Camera. Distinguished delegate, I am Sasagawa Hiroyoshi, State Minister of the Environment of Japan. First of all, I would like to express my respect and gratitude for the contribution made by the IRENA Secretary to the expanded use of renewable energy. For the widespread use of renewable energy, it is essential for each country to formulate and implement a plan to fast energy transition. As a theme of the session's indications, I am Japan following the announcement of the 2050 carbon neutral goal. All the ministers are making constant effort to speed up the review of the plan for global warming countermeasures, strategic energy plan, and the long-term strategy under the Paris Agreement, under the leadership of Prime Minister Suga. By turning the two crises caused by COVID-19 and climate change into monument to redesign our city and economy to be more sustainable and resilient. We are pressing forward with measures to further introduce and expand the use of renewable energy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Director General, for giving me this opportunity. As you may know, the Korean government announced in last October that it will move toward carbon neutrality by 2050. In last December, it also announced its updated NDC 2030 and submitted its LEDS 2050 to the UNFCCC. With the latest NDC, Korea aims to reduce its greenhouse gas emission by 24.4% by 2030 compared to the level of 2017. To make this happen, the government planned to mandate emission reduction targets by law based on its Framework Act on Low Carbon Green Growth, while actively utilizing its emission trading scheme to make the market lead the way of emission reduction. In Korea, 87% of greenhouse gas are generated from energy production, which is greater than 66% of the global average. This is why an energy transition toward renewable is crucial for Korea to forge ahead with carbon neutralities. Against this backdrop, Korea has set a mid to long-term target to increase the share of renewables to 20% by 2030 and 30 to 35% by 2040, and is actively implementing various projects to accelerate its energy transitions. Firstly, to expand the deployment of renewables, Korea allows local government to take the lead in large-scale energy projects based on consent from local communities, while encouraging the share of benefit with residents. Furthermore, the government plans to establish a wind power one-stop shop this year that deal with all the necessary permits and license to rapidly implement offshore wind projects. Secondly, to facilitate private investment in renewable infrastructures, the government will join hands with the private sectors and establish a Green New Deal fund worth around $18 billion. Last but not least, to increase the demand for renewables, Korea will encourage business to join the RE100 campaign by providing support. Distinguished ministers, going forward, Korea will strengthen cooperation with other countries and institutions that are of the same mind about the importance of carbon neutrality and mid to long-term plan for it. In this context, Korea look forward to more opportunity to share relevant green strategy between member countries under the leadership of RENA. I believe that we could pursue new cooperation programs beyond the solar PV and wind power to identify joint research and development and demonstration projects for new green energies, such as green hydrogen and renewable heat. I have no doubt that this will accelerate our energy transition as a whole by expanding renewable energies and diversifying the global energy mix. Thank you for listening.
Dear participants of the conference, on behalf of the State Committee on Energy, Industry and Natural Resources of the Kyrgyz Republic, I would like to greet you at the 11th session of the Assembly of the IRENA. The objective of this assembly is to discuss the current global energy agenda, to identify main directions of development of the fuel and energy sector, and to realize the potential of international cooperation in the field of the renewables. This conference brings together executives from major international energy companies, leading international experts and organizations. This conference provides a forum for the discussion of the main challenges faced by our economies and current challenges in the development of the fuel and energy sector. This also helps us to move on to cleaner fuels. The dialogue covers the most topical issues of the energy market. We are talking about the development of clean fuels. We are discussing the latest developments in energy efficiency and energy saving, and we are also discussing the prospects for renewables. Today, an important challenge is to address energy security and energy efficiency, and there's a particular hope for energy generation from renewables. There is a constant threat of an oil supply crisis. Also, the modern society has environmental concerns, and consequently, we are also facing climate challenges. Therefore, the modern energy policy has to aim at renewables, and within the next few decades, we should develop our economies with the use of the renewables without emitting greenhouse gases. The development of renewable energy sources is one of the strategically important areas for the development of the electrical energy sector in the Kyrgyz Republic. And it should be noted that the Kyrgyz Republic has considerable potential for the development of the renewable energy sources, especially given its hydropower resources. The development of renewables is further promoted by the adoption of a new law on renewable energy and by the adoption of a new law on public-private partnership, which opens up new opportunities for attracting investments. The adoption of this law will increase the investment attractiveness of the renewable energy, and at the UN Conference on Sustainable Development in 2012, Kyrgyzstan expressed its commitment to sustainable development through moving towards green economy priorities. And such a transition is an urgent necessity, as the country's socio-economic development is largely based on the consumption of natural resources. Recognizing the importance of the transition to green economy, we have developed and approved a concept of Kyrgyzstan, a country of green economy. I would like to note that in order for the Kyrgyz Republic to join the International Renewable Energy Agency, on December the 16th, 2020, the Parliament of the Kyrgyz Republic passed a resolution on the adoption of the law of the Kyrgyz Republic on the ratification of the Statute of the IRENA. The statute was adopted at the conference on the establishment of the IRENA on January the 26th, 2009 in Bonn. Allow me to thank the organizers of today's conference and looking forward to fruitful cooperation and active dialogue. And let today's event be a start of a big change in promoting global energy security and energy development. I wish all participants fruitful work and interesting discussions. Thank you for your kind attention.
My name is Tuti Chilton. I am the Executive Director for the Palau Energy Administration. And on behalf of Minister Charles Obiang, I will be providing Palau's intervention for today's National Energy Planning and Implementation for Fostering Energy Transition workshop today. Specifically, what is the role of the Regional Pacific NDC Hub and how has Palau experienced the workings with the NDC Hub in terms of energy transition and climate change action to achieve its Paris agreements. From the Republic of Palau's experience with the Regional Pacific NDC Hub, we feel that it is a one-stop shop that provides both technical and financial guidance to assist Pacific Island countries and territories to help them meet their NDCs, both in human capacity as well as international reporting. Specifically, helping Pacific Island countries and territories to be able to become more self-sufficient towards a fossil fuel future that will guide the Pacific Island countries and territories beyond 2020 and on the pathway to 2050. The second part of our intervention is IRENA's role in supporting its members and how can the NDC Hub partner with IRENA. And I have had the pleasure through the Palau Energy Administration to work both with IRENA as well as the NDC Hub. And I feel that with IRENA's international expertise and with the NDC Hub's local connection and commitment, I think this is a great partnership that will help us develop pilot and testing projects that can be scaled up to meet individual countries' needs as they develop their NDCs. Specifically, how do we move towards a fossil fuel-free future? For Palau, we are now developing our Palau National Energy Policy, and in that policy, we are focusing on a fossil fuel-free future that also includes new technologies, specifically hydrogen, OTEC, and other developing technologies. And IRENA has agreed to help us develop our roadmap, and an NDC Hub has helped us develop our enhanced NDCs to move forward, specifically in the waste sector as well as the transportation sector. So that is the partnership in IRENA's international experience and connections and NDC Hub's local connection in developing human capacity for the Pacific Islands. With that, on behalf of Minister Charles Obiang and the Republic of Palau, we want to thank you for your time and for your attention. Have a great day. Thank you.
Muy buenas tardes, distinguidos miembros de esta asamblea.
Good afternoon, distinguished members of the IRENA Assembly, and our kind regards to Director General La Cámara. On behalf of the Dominican Republic, we would like to thank IRENA for all the support provided in the form of technical assistance and in the development of programs. The Dominican Republic is immersed in a energy transition process aimed at reaching a total of 1,118 megawatts of renewable installed capacity by 2021. The Dominican Republic has projects underway for an additional 1,600 megawatts of solar PV, wind, and biomass technologies, which would complement and contribute to achieving a 25% share of renewables before 2025. In order to comply with the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, member countries should strive to implement policies with measurable impacts. We are currently in the Dominican Republic redefining our policy for substitution of energy sources, rational use of energy, and energy efficiency. The use of quantitative indicators will help us provide information on the potential to increase energy targets for each energy source, and thus contribute to the redefining of our long-term objectives that could lead to the decarbonization of the sector. Currently, renewables are focused on solar and wind sources. However, there are other options with great potential. Through innovation, we can implement new projects aiming at ongoing promotion of the use of renewable energies while meeting the country's energy needs. We hope to continue working closely with IRENA and to strengthen collaboration, creating synergies with other stakeholders of this agency and working together to pursue our common goals. Thank you.
Good afternoon from Athens and the Greek Ministry of Environment and Energy. It is such a great moment for all of us for participating in this lively and inspiring debate to share the same goal, putting sustainability and the well-being of citizens at the center of country's growth strategy. Greece faces with determination the issues of climate change and promotion of renewables, having energy transition at the top of our agenda. Our strategic goal as a country is to shift to an energy model that is greener, cleaner, more efficient, and more competitive. In our recent National Energy and Climate Plan, we have adopted ambitious targets for 2030. We committed to 5 key targets. First, being a traditionally coal-reliant country, we are committed to a full move away from lignite in electricity production by 2028. This is why in our move away from coal, we adopted a master plan for a socially, environmentally, and financially just transition for regions that traditionally relied on lignite for jobs and growth. Second, a share of renewables in our final energy consumption greater than 35%. Third, Greece wants 1 in 3 new cars sold in the country to be an electric vehicle by 2030. Fourth, an improvement in energy efficiency of at least 38%, adopting incentives for the renovation of residential and industrial savings, and for a more dynamic and informed use of energy by final consumers. Overall, a reduction of greenhouse gas emissions of 55% as the culmination of all previous goals. The transition to a greener energy model under Greece's national plan is estimated to require 44 billion euros worth of investment by 2030. We are confident that we will overshoot our targets. Besides, there is a clear public mandate for all governments that we now seize the opportunity to deliver a bold green economic recovery from COVID. The need to transition to a zero carbon economy is not only a commercial opportunity of our time, but it's the chance to transform our economy and build a society that focuses on people's well-being
and respects the planet's environmental limits. IRENA is at the forefront in the drive for change, enabling policies and disseminating best practices and optimum practical tools for informed decision-making. All of us here, in one capacity or another, believe in this change and work to make it happen.
Energy accounts for approximately 2/3 of global greenhouse gases.
So I would like to thank the 12 countries that for a very comprehensive speech. And if we have no other comments, I would like to give the floor to Ms. Gauri Singh, Deputy Director General of IRENA, to address the issues raised and overall reflection. Ms. Singh, you have the floor, please.
Thank you very much, Vice President. Excellencies, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, I wish to thank this high-level gathering of policymakers and partners for joining this ministerial discussion on national energy planning and implementation for fostering energy transition. The ministerial session today highlighted the role of renewable energy in accelerating the energy transition. Countries shared their experiences and best practices in the energy component of their NDCs. Ministers and high-level representatives from our partner organizations emphasized that 2021 will be critical in tackling twofold challenges of climate change and the recovery from the pandemic. From the discussions today, it was clear that IRENA members recognize the key role of renewable energy in supporting a green recovery and building back a more sustainable and climate resilient system. Today's meeting also highlighted how steps are being taken by countries for energy transition, and it is helping them overcome challenges of energy security, fueling economic growth and creating new employment opportunities. IRENA members have called on the need to raise ambition on climate action, accelerate policy and policy innovation across electricity and end-use sectors, foster networks of cooperation with private sector, and improve access to finance to scale up renewable energy investments. Member countries and partners have also recognized the importance of working together to achieve the objectives of the Paris Agreement. COP26 offers an important opportunity to demonstrate the global efforts for further cutting the energy-related greenhouse gas emissions through enhancement of the nationally determined contributions. Several countries have already improved their NDC commitments in the latest submissions last year. Member states have also called for IRENA to play an active role and engage with the national energy and climate constituencies for enhancement and implementation of the climate action through renewables and support the efforts in energy transition. Members encouraged IRENA to foster high-level energy climate dialogue amongst them and partners for supporting the implementation of climate action in the run-up of the COP26 and beyond. While IRENA is already engaged with nearly 70 countries to support their efforts by providing long-term energy scenario capacity building on energy planning, data and statistics, and renewable energy targets and policy, we look forward to supporting other interested countries in this endeavor. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Singh, for your remarks. In closing, I would like to inform you that Zimbabwe will report back to the plenary on Thursday, 21st of January, on this important discussion and we have had today. So let me also express my sincere gratitude to all the participants. Thank you all for a positive and constructive meeting. This concludes our consideration of the Ministerial Plenary meeting, National Energy Planning and Implementation for Fostering the Energy Transition. Distinguished colleagues, we have reached to the end of our deliberations for today. This meeting is now adjourned. Thank you all. See you.